Empire of Steel. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 626 Fine Production. The whistle of the steam engine sounded from time to time in the military workshop. Chen Qi came far away, but the sound was suppressed by the long beep. Seeing this, Xiao Ming stopped and looked at Chen Qi. He didn't understand what he was talking about until he got closer and asked, "Really?" Xiao Ming asked again. Since he adopted the converter steel-making technology, he is very confident in the quality of Qingzhou steel, and now the advanced production technology is enough to make Qingzhou's steel reach the level of the 19th century, and this level is enough for him to promote the industrial revolution of the closed country, because the quality of steel has already met the manufacturing needs of most machinery. Among them, the standard to distinguish the quality of the steel is to use the current steel to make artillery. If it can withstand the strength requirements of artillery, it is not a problem to transport it to other places. His Royal Highness, half a year ago, the military workshop used the steel produced by the steel workshop to cast a cannon. We have been using this cannon for shooting for the past 6 months. This cannon is not a bronze cannon in all aspects. Chen Qi stated. Xiao Ming nodded. This shows that the quality of the new type of steel has passed the test, and the strength standard can be used as gun steel, so he can save copper to make other things. After all, Diu is now a copper-poor country. In that case, the production of this field gun should be able to increase. Xiao Ming asked, generally speaking, the number of artillery pieces in the army is still relatively small. All field artillery pieces add up to only about 200 pieces. These field artillery pieces are enough to be used in one war, but not enough for 2 wars, and now Xiao Ming, there are colonies like the Three Mountains Kingdom overseas, and standard weapons are also required in the colonies. Chen Qi smiled and said, "His Royal Highness, this is what the subordinate wants to say. It is no longer a problem to use steel to cast field guns, so the workshop does not need to worry about copper, but now I don't know how much the army needs. A field gun producing another 300 guns, bringing the number of field guns in the army to 500 guns should be enough for the time being." Xiao Ming pondered for a while and said, for him, the field artillery is mainly aimed at the barbarians. After all, compared with the cumbersome artillery before, these artillery can be easily transported on the grasslands. China's ZTE, this hidden danger in the north must be resolved. Yes, Your Highness, the next official will arrange for the craftsmen to continue production. Chen Qi said. After the 3 people talked about this, they talked about some firearm production. According to Song Changping, he and Lin Wentao were trying to build an assembly line with a steam engine as the core. This assembly line will integrate the manufacture of barrels, the standardized production of spare parts, and the final assembly. The first 2 are realized by steam engine-driven lathes. Now some lathes in the lathe workshop have been transferred to the military workshop, drilling machines, milling machines and grinding machines. This matter is easy to say, but difficult to do. For this reason, you need to set up a craftsman to inspect the dimensions of spare parts. Xiao Ming hesitated and said, at the time of Western industrialization, standardized and refined production was delivered to various factories. And the inspectors who were born with toolboxes to check the qualification rate of products were born. Now Lin Wentao and Song Changping are preparing to make steam power flow in production, which is unavoidable. Lin Wentao also said this. He has sent a batch of measuring tools to the military workshop. Song Changping said. Xiao Ming looked at Chen Qi. Chen Qi also nodded, and then he sent someone to the workshop to take out the toolbox. After a while, a craftsman appeared in front of the 3 of them. He opened the toolbox and spread it out on the ground. The measuring tools, long and short, appeared in front of Xiao Ming. Your Highness, this was sent by Lin Wentao. Song Changping took out a caliper, and the value on it was exactly the millimeter, centimeter and other units drawn by Xiao Ming. After he unified the measurement standards, the prefectures and counties in the country adopted this set of measurement units, as did Bowen College, where Lin Wentao also learned this. He glanced at the wooden square box. There were rulers, compasses, protractors and other measuring instruments on the upper and lower layers of the box. Xiao Ming was relieved to see this. As more and more students of Bowen College participated in the construction of Fanggu, they began to take the initiative to apply the knowledge they learned to various places. Good. Xiao Ming smiled. For him, the industrialization of the feudal country will always be the foundation of his own foothold. If the current feudal country can reach the level of British industrialization, He will not care about the other vassal kings of the Great Yu Kingdom only for a limited period of 4 years. The industry has stayed in the small circle of King Zhao and has not extended to other states and counties in the closed country. It's not that Xiaoming doesn't care about the industrialization of the feudal country, but that for 4 years of continuous wars, he invested most of his financial income in the war. Therefore, the workshops related to the military industry are very prosperous now, but it is not enough to extend to other industrial products. The most important point is that businessmen profit from wars. They are more keen to invest their money in wars to make quick money. Although Xiaoming is aware of this, he has no choice. After all, wars need money. It is because of this that he realizes that it is extremely difficult to industrialize without a stable domestic environment, and because of this, he is eager to obtain a stable surrounding environment. Wang Zhuang's intelligence stated very bluntly that the King of Chu had already been in contact with the French. If the King of Chu finally cooperated with the French, it would be a threat to him, because the French would not only bring advanced knowledge to the King of Chu. Weapons also bring some different ideas, and thinking is the most dangerous thing, taking all kinds of measuring tools. And the two talked about the production of the assembly line. Xiaoming will return to the palace. Now it is a good thing that this advanced industrial production method has appeared in the military workshop. According to Xiaoming's experience, any technology as first used in military convenience will be slowly transferred to civilian use. If the production system of the military workshop is mature, it will also lead to changes in the private industry. Returning to the palace, Xiaoming began to prepare for the enthronement. Although he knew that the enthronement was only to rectify his own name, and could not change the decision of King Yan, King Zhao, and King Liang to fight Qi, it can be seen from Pang Yukin's performance. There will be a great shock to the country because the soldiers of the feudal state will no longer fight for a vassal king, but for an emperor. The inspiration of this belief will make his army emit stronger will and strength than before. Chapter 627 Missionaries. P.S. One more chapter. A ray of sunlight shone on the broken walls of Jinling City, and under the golden brilliance, the corvées who were responsible for repairing the city walls sweated like rain. Although it has entered autumn, Jinling City is still hot, and the clothes of the corvées are soaked after only 1 hour of work. Elder Fiji, is the news of His Highness's enthronement true? Fiji stood in front of the city wall. The Jinling City wall was severely damaged by the war. Since he arrived at Jinling City, this was the first thing he did. After all, the opposite side of the Yangtze River was the King of Chu. Although Xiaoming signed a covenant with the King of Chu, this was only a temporary expedient for the King of Chu for the sake of firearms, so repairing the city wall was an urgent matter in his opinion. Of course, this matter can still be false. When the late emperor was dying, he handed over the edict to Du Hengfiji, stroked his beard with a smile on his face. Yesterday, the news of King Qi's ascension to the throne reached Jinling City, which made him happy that night and never fell asleep for him. If Xiaoming does not ascend the throne for a day, he is the emperor of the Great Yu Kingdom, and the longer he delays, the more he will be questioned. Now he has regained the 13 states of Wei land immediately, and his strength has greatly increased. At the best time, Xiaoming's quick decision also made him very much appreciated, and once Xiaoming ascends the throne, Fei Yu'er will be the queen of the dynasty, so the Fei family's position in King Zhao will be solid. The Fiji figure was an old man wearing a blue silk gown, and his age was similar to Fiji. He said, "If this is the case, our Tong family should also go to King Zhao to congratulate His Highness on his enthronement. His Highness is kind and generous. Your Highness is all grateful to aid, if Mr. Fei Jie does not dislike it, and Tong is willing to go to King Zhao with Mr. Jie Hao. Member Tong is indeed a sensible person. It is a false rumor that His Royal Highness will kill the nobles without mercy. Don't believe it." Fiji said with a smile. After coming to Jinling City, he intervened in dealing with the affairs of the wealthy family. He showed no mercy to the Zhang family, who were related to Jinling City and the King of Wei by marriage. Because of this, all the wealthy families in Jinling City are eagerly waiting, ready to raise troops at any time to defeat him. It was just after disposing of the Zhang family that he suddenly summoned the Tong family. After a long talk, the patriarch of the Tong family walked out of the government office with a smile on his face, and then the decree about the disposal of the wealthy family spread among the wealthy family. All of a sudden, they dropped their weapons and came to visit Fiji. Tong Hong Cheng heard the words and said with a smile, "If it weren't for Mr. Fiji, we would have believed the words of King Wei and made a big mistake." Now, in order to prove the loyalty of the Jinling noble family to His Highness, Tong should also go to King Zhao. Fiji nodded. Actually, the most important things for His Highness are the stability and taxation of the 13 states. There are too many unfounded things His Highness has experienced. Tong Yuanwei needs to show His Highness something effective. It is hearing this, Tong Hongcheng showed an embarrassed smile. Although Xiao Ming's decree did not kill off the wealthy clan, the disbanding of the wealthy clan and the return of the land illegally occupied by the common people must still be implemented, and whether these two items can be implemented depends on the Tong family. The cooperation of the local clans old Fiji is at ease. Tong will definitely handle this matter, and Tong will be the first to disobey His Highness's decree. Tong Hongcheng said decisively. Fiji nodded when he heard the words. Since that's the case, let's go back and prepare. Tong Hongcheng heard the words, bowed and chose to leave. Seeing Tong Hongcheng walking away from Fiji, his eyes became cold. Just as he said to Xiao Ming, the wealthy families in the 13 states are deeply rooted, and the roots are deep huge. If it wasn't for the fear of the ferocity of the Southern Expedition Army this time, it is estimated that the civil unrest in the 13 states would not have subsided so quickly. But even so, it will take some time to solve the clan's trilogy without bloodshed, and for this, he chose a strategy of pulling one and a dozen. This Tong Hongcheng is the local clan he attracted, and now he is using this Tong Hongcheng to deter other clans. Moreover, the autumn harvest season is approaching, and now the government only controls Jinling City and its surrounding counties, and there are many villages without officials from Qingzhou. It's not that he doesn't want to send it, but that the 13 states have basically run out of free officials, and now most counties and villages have to rely on these local nobles and Liziang to govern now. Although the people of Wei have been influenced by some Qingzhou ideas, traditional concepts cannot be changed in a day or two. If there is no one to supervise the collection of taxes, the loss today will be huge. The Nanzhang army worked so hard to lay down the 13 states for taxation. Fiji sees this issue very clearly, so he just mentioned Tong Hongcheng just now. This effective thing is taxation, he was thinking, when suddenly Wei Yuan, the prefect of Jinling, came towards him. This Wei Yuan was originally just a rank 6 petty official in Chang'an, but he achieved excellent results in the written test of Bowen College and withstood Xiao Ming's personal test before he was sent to Jinling City to take charge of the prefect. Elder Jack, King Chu's navy has appeared on the river. Wei Yuan said nervously. King Chu's navy? Fiji frowned. When did it happen? The news from the guards on the dock just now shows that the Dengzhou army has already mounted the city wall to be on guard, Wei Yuan said. When Fiji heard the words, he immediately walked towards the southern city wall. The sudden appearance of the navy of the King of Chu here is not a good sign. Even if it is not to take the opportunity to take a foot in Jinling City, I am afraid it is also to guard against them. Just as he thought, the King of Chu never trusted them. The two arrived at Nanchang and boarded the city wall. At this time, Yi Qingyan was looking at the river with a telescope. The warships sent by the King of Chu this time were all warships loaded with artillery, and they were moving from west to east. At this time the battleship headed by it is slightly larger, and someone is vaguely pointing at Jinling City on it. It's a missionary. Yi Qingyan put down the telescope and said to Fiji. Fiji took Yi Qingyan's binoculars and looked at the river, and sure enough, on the battleship headed by him, he saw a blond man in a black robe with a cross hanging in front of him. He said, His Royal Highness sent the news that the King of Chu had contact with the French. The King of Chu was beaten by the Dutch, and since then he has been very eager to get in touch with other Western countries to obtain firearms. It is impossible to say that this is a missionary from France. Scholar, just why did they come here? Yi Qingyan frowned. Fiji is also a wily man. He said, Suhang is a place of wealth in the world. Now that His Royal Highness has taken Jinling City, the King of Chu will definitely worry about the safety of Suhang. They are so arrogant to warn us. Chapter 628 French. P.S. The map you want is in the book group. If you have a way to post the map in public, you can also remind the snail the moist river wind roared from the water to the wall of Jinling City. Yi Qingyan said lazily, a missionary can scare us? Does the King of Chu underestimate us too much? I'm afraid that's not the original intention of the King of Chu. Don't forget where our firearms came from. Maybe he wants to tell us that they can make firearms now. Yi Qingyan frowned when he heard the words. His Royal Highness once said that he knew that all skills were taught by a missionary. Did the King of Chu also find such a person? That's what I'm worried about too. Fiji worried. He didn't know that the missionary in Xiao Ming's mouth was just an excuse at this time. On the battleship under Jinling City, the missionary with blonde hair and blue eyes was also holding binoculars to look at Fiji and Yi Qingyan at the head of Jinling City, and then he turned his attention to the soldiers on the city wall. After confirming that the soldier on the wall was carrying a flintlock pistol with a bayonet, he put down his binoculars. It's amazing that these soldiers actually have flintlock guns. The missionary exclaimed. Standing beside the missionary was a middle-aged man in luxurious clothes. He said to the missionary, "Mr. Richard, now you believe it?" "Yes, I believe it now." The missionary called Richard said solemnly. After the army of the king of Chu arrived near Guangzhou, he contacted the generals of the Chu army and would lead them to fight with the French. Richard came to the Great Yu Kingdom very early as a missionary, and lived in Guangzhou for 15 years. During this period, he learned the language of the Great Yu Kingdom and kept observing the Great Yu Kingdom, so he was so surprised at the appearance of the Great Yu Congress and advanced firearm. Putting away the binoculars, Richard entered the cabin. In the cabin was a middle-aged man with black hair and blue eyes in a blue tuxedo. The man's mouth was flanked by a raised beard. Brazil, they didn't lie. In the north of the country there was indeed an extraordinary vassal who could make flintlocks and cast iron guns, said Richard. Brazil is from the French Expeditionary Force. This time he was ordered to come to Chu state in order to cooperate with the King of Chu. After a short contact, the King of Chu was very willing to do business with France, provided that France sent officers to train their generals, and provide them with weapons. In fact, after occupying the Annan Kingdom, France could not fight against a huge Yu Kingdom alone, and now it is their hope that they can get the right to trade without war. Of course, taking the opportunity to sell arms, this is more in line with their wishes. In this way, they can not only make a fortune in Europe by selling goods from the Great Yu Kingdom, but also sell firearms to the vassal kings of the Great Yu Kingdom at high prices. It's unbelievable. The Dutch said that they were trading with a powerful vassal in the Great Yu Kingdom. I didn't expect this to be true. In this case, we French people can't be left behind. Taking advantage of the domestic turmoil in Great Yu, it is us. When demarcating the sphere of influence, Brazil said on the way, Li Cha had already told him the current situation of the Great Yu Kingdom. For him, a divided Great Yu Kingdom was exactly what they needed. The Dutch are very shrewd. This King of Chu's army is too backward, and his industry is in a mess. It is not easy to support him. Li Cha said. Brazil frowned, but this King of Chu is our best choice right now. His territory is in the south and can be connected to the Annan Kingdom, and commodities can also be transported from Annan Kingdom to our country by land. And this Key King, it seems ambitious, and I am afraid that it will be our enemy in the future. The Dutch also said the same thing. They were full of worries about this King Key. Whether it was occupying Ryukyu or garrisoning in the city of Duranja, it showed that King Key was very strong. Claire was forced to cooperate with him. It is said that someone has been sent to pass the news back to the Dutch Parliament, and the Parliament will finally decide whether to continue to cooperate with the Key King. Brazil nodded. Claire's not too stupid. He should understand that the emergence of a powerful regime in East Asia is very unfavorable to us Europeans. The Great Yu country is very large and has a large population. The Key King's unification will be our calamity. Future trade will be what he says. You're so right. Li Cha smiled. Maybe we should also cooperate with the British. After all, there are common interests of Europeans here. I don't need it for the time being, otherwise we will have another piece of the cake. Brazil shook his head. The two were communicating, but the other people on the boat couldn't understand it at all, because they all spoke their own native language. After the communication, the middle-aged man who was in charge of the matter said, Lieutenant Brazil said he would help you. The King of Chu trains the army, and will also contact the merchants to provide weapons for your King of Chu. The middle-aged man heaved a sigh of relief and said, That's great. The two of you, please follow me to Suzhou City, where I will treat you all grandly. Your Kingayan and Fiji on the city wall witnessed the appearance and disappearance of King Chu's warships. Fiji said, What the hell is this King of Chu thinking about? I want to talk to His Highness about this when I go back. This time referring to the Kingayan side, he said, Elder Fei Jack, the safety of Jinling City is of great importance, and you will not be able to go back to see His Highness's enthronement ceremony at the end of the day, and I hope that Elder Fei Jer will have a few good words for the last general in front of His Highness. General Yi is conscientious and conscientious, I naturally see it in my eyes, don't worry. After that, Fiji went down the city wall. The news from King Zhao made him return as soon as possible. After packing up, he set off for King Zhao. At the same time, the representative of the wealthy family in Jinling City went with him along the way. When they passed other states and counties, some wealthy families joined in. When they arrived in King Zhao 10 days later, the Fiji team had become a huge team composed of thousands of people. So many wealthy people entering the city naturally quickly attracted the attention of the King Zhao government. Pang Yukin was relieved to learn that Fiji came back. In this respect, he is not as good as Fiji. The specific arrangement of the enthronement depends on Fiji. After the two met, they immediately went to the palace, where they tried on Xiaoming's dragon robe. His Royal Highness's dragon robe is really generous and decent, especially the 9 golden dragons on it are about to soar. Seeing Xiaoming dressed like this, Fiji was startled and flattered. Pang Yukin smiled, with a sense of achievement in his eyes. Before, he only had the mentality of being a little rich, but now his mood has completely changed. Xiaoming smiled when he heard the words. The dragon robe had just been delivered, and he said, "Old Fei Jack, your flattery is too old-fashioned, but you just came back and ran to the palace, there must be other things." Chapter 629 The Problem of the Wealthy Family. His Highness's eyes are like torches. The old minister really can't hide anything. Fiji and Pang Yukin looked at each other, the wrinkles on their faces crowded together because of their smiles. Fei Yuir was bringing Luo, Zuan and Xia home to try on clothes for him. Seeing this, they walked past Xiaoming to other places to temporarily avoid suspicion. Fiji glanced at Fei Yuir, and her eyes flashed a hint of admiration. In formal occasions, the harem cannot participate in government affairs. She is about to become a queen, and she should memorize this. After the 4 of them left, Fiji said loudly, "Your Highness, the nobles from the 13 states who came to Kingzhou this time with the lower officials are also living in the inn in Kingzhou City. In order to be able to come to your Highness, congratulate the wealthy clan in the 13 states?" Xiaoming frowned. He still remembered what happened 4 years ago, so he was still wary of the wealthy clan in his heart. It's just that he also understands that killing is inexhaustible. After all, the wealthy clans in the Great Yu Kingdom have lasted for thousands of years, and each wealthy clan represents the power of local clans. There used to be more than 20,000 members of the Kingzhou Wang family, just clan children, and the Wang family was nothing compared to the wealthy family in Wei. The other members of the Wang family were dismantled and divided into various parts of the feudal country, and this was the only way to completely dissolve the wealthy clan in the 6 states. Fiji was keenly aware of the change in Xiaoming's expression. He said, "His Royal Highness, now the 13 states have basically restored order, and taxes are collected and paid as usual. This is all thanks to the support of these wealthy families." Fiji explained. Xiaoming nodded. His expression suddenly became relaxed. He said, "Old Fei Jack, don't worry, since this king has issued a new decree, it will naturally not change." Xiaoming's purpose in laying down Wei land is to pay taxes, otherwise his occupation of Wei land is tantamount to the occupation of Iraq by the U.S. imperialists, which will consume huge resources, and the Dengzhou army of the Southern Expedition Army will also be dragged into Wei land for a long-term counterinsurgency. In the quagmire, this was undoubtedly a disaster for him. After all, the Great Yu Kingdom is not a modern society, and it is not easy to find the wealthy people who go deep into the mountains and forests. As a result, a chaotic and untaxed Wei land will not only bring him no benefits, but will be a burden at the beginning. He simply believed that force could solve everything, but the various information collected by Li San from the 13 states made him gradually realize that this was just wishful thinking. According to Li San's information, many villages in Wei are based on clan surnames, and hundreds of thousands of people in a village have a surname. During this time, his production team was established, but the captain elected by the villagers was still a very prestigious person in the village. This kind of information is different from the folk situation in Kingzhou. The reason for this difference is that at that time, the wealthy people in Kingzhou were already very weak because of the repeated invasions of barbarians. All the children of wealthy families with some family properties hid in Yubao on the county, while the poor people were very weak. People have no choice but to stay in their own villages at this time. He realized that governing a big country is like cooking small fresh food, and it is necessary to control the heat properly, otherwise all the big fires and small fires will be a mess. So the old minister can feel at ease. Your Highness, in fact, for the clansmen and nobles, they don't care who will rule them. For them, as long as they can protect their own interests, it is enough. Now your Highness and the Wei Dihao clan are at peace. These news, if it spreads to other places, it will make it easier for His Highness to conquer the world. Pang Yukin agreed. He said, Your Highness, what Fei just said is very true, and it is precisely because of the change of dynasties, these nobles still live freely. Pang Changshi praised their shrewdness, or satirized their selfishness. Pang Yukin's words made a pun, and Xiaoming couldn't help laughing. His Royal Highness, this is nothing but the nonsense of a subordinate. Pang Yukin sighed, and now his mood is as complicated as Xiaoming. The wealthy families in the 6 states are exhausted. He has handled government affairs with ease in the past 4 years. He doesn't have to deal with some wealthy families, But now that there is another way land, he has to meet the people he hates again. Xiaoming naturally understands Pang Yukin's feelings, but if a massacre against the wealthy clan is carried out in the 13 states, the population of Weidi may be reduced by 1/3 in the process of slaughtering the wealthy. These wealthy clans who are driven to dead end will definitely slaughter the common people, and the number will continue to rise by then if the entire Great Yu Kingdom is killed all the way. I am afraid that the Great Yu Congress and the late Eastern Han Dynasty, the late Sui and early Tang dynasties generally directly lead to the loss of 2/3 of the country's population, and he can't bear this price, because the West has risen, and his feudal kingdom will inevitably lose a lot of troops at that time. Doesn't this give foreigners an opportunity to invade? Therefore, in the end, he will choose to compromise first and then govern. First, disarm the wealthy clan, and then completely dismantle the disadvantage of the wealthy clan's monopoly of educational resources through universal education. As long as the people at the bottom have the channel to ascend to the court, the wealthy family cannot control the court. Just like Li Shimin's implementation of the imperial examination, you have to bear with this king if you have emotions. Now this king has to take care of the overall situation, not the 6 states. Xiaoming reminded Pang Yukin, so that he would not have the same bad temper as before. Yes, Your Highness. Pang Yukin nodded in response. Fiji showed a relieved look at this time, and he said, Your Highness, these noble families have all arrived in Qingzhou. Does Your Highness want to take some time to meet them? See, of course you can see it, and you have to see it in a beautiful way, otherwise it will make them feel at ease in their stomachs. Xiaoming said sternly. When he put on a dragon robe, Xiaoming's mood changed. Now he began to think about how to govern this country, how to bring this devastated country side by side with the Western powers, or even surpass the Western powers. For him, this is a difficult task, and although he has mastered advanced technology, he cannot grasp the hearts and minds of everyone. In addition to worrying about the wolves looking around, he is still anxiously waiting for the consequences of universal education. The people will no longer be ignorant, which will mean that they will actively participate in politics. It will be unknown whether his imperial power will be challenged by Western democratic politics at that time, but although he understands it, he cannot stop because this is a contradictory problem. If you want to lead the Great Yu Kingdom to develop into a modern country, you must open up the wisdom of the people. On the contrary, continue to fool the people and still stay in the feudal dynasty. Sometimes Xiaoming also asks if he can let go of his power and choose to make concessions, and his answer is no. He has to admit that power is an addictive thing. Although he has acquired countless knowledge, he is still unavoidable, and he knows that once he gives up his rights, he will end up in prison instead of death, which is inevitable. He will not be stupid after working hard for the second life, and he has to be a lifelong emperor no matter what. Chapter 630. So, the next official will go back and arrange this matter. There was a smile in Fiji's eyes. This kind of smile was the complacency that his suggestion was taken seriously on the matter of the wealthy family. His suggestion was approved by Xiaoming, which must be a kind of recognition of ability to Xiaoming. From Xiao Wangxun to Xiaoming's side, the people he serves have changed, and he naturally has to prove his outstanding talents to Xiaoming. Xiaoming nodded when he heard the words, and said, The enthronement ceremony is just 1 month away. This month is enough time for you to pass the news of this king's enthronement to other vassal kings, and you can test their reactions while you are enthroned. Yes, Your Highness. Pang Yukin and Fiji nodded at the same time. They still had a lot of things to deal with before the enthronement ceremony. After talking about the matter, the two were about to leave. At this time, Fiji suddenly remembered the matter of the King of Chu. He said to Xiaoming, Your Highness, before the official came to Qingzhou, something strange happened. Let's hear it. Xiaoming was in a good mood. For the past 2 days King Chu's fleet once appeared outside Jinling City, and we also saw missionaries from the west on board. Fiji said, Western missionary? Xiaoming showed an interested look. He said, Wang Zhuan said that the King of Chu had contact with the French. Now it seems that the contact is not shallow. The King of Chu's army has already captured Guangzhou. It is said that there are many Western businessmen and missionaries living in Guangzhou. Perhaps these are not French. Fiji pondered for a while. No matter where the missionaries are, in short, this is not a good thing for us. Xiaoming frowned. In Xiaoming's opinion, King Chu's recognition of firearms is more than that of other vassal kings. Just as he was taught a lesson by the Western powers at the end of the Qing dynasty, the King of Chu was also taught a lesson by the Dutch. Now the King of Chu, who is being stimulated, does not know what will happen to his psychology. In other words, the current King of Chu may be more willing to accept changes. This is also his habit of dealing with the Dutch to maintain his health. The mentality of the heaven and the kingdom cursed a barbarian now that the north is undecided, and Feng Guo has no time to look south. Fiji frowned and said, Your Highness, this king's subordinate officials thought that this king of Zhao was a threat, and now it seems that this king of Chu is not simple. Xiaoming looked towards the south with deep eyes, but he was not worried about how big the waves could be from the king of Chu, because even if there are French people to help the king of Chu, the state of Chu cannot catch up with the industrialization level of King Zhao, and the essence of the war in the age of navigation is just a competition of industrial capabilities. Moreover, if the French were involved in the civil strife in the Great Yu Kingdom, he would have reason to clean up the Annan Kingdom at that time. The king of southern Chu, the king of northern Zhao, the mother-in-law said that the father and the emperor have always been jealous of them, and now it seems to be the case. But now the king of Chu will not rashly tear up the covenant even if he cooperates with the French, and he still has a lot of goods. If I didn't get it, I want to take advantage of this time to unify the north as soon as possible, Xiaoming said indifferently. As long as your highness follows Wei Di's decree for the nobles, once the kings of Yan and Liang are defeated, the nobles of Yan and Liang will rush to show their loyalty to his highness. Fiji believed. Xiaoming nodded. The idea from Fiji was tantamount to lowering the difficulty of unification from high to low. Of course, everything has to pay a price, so the problem of the wealthy family still remains. After talking about Wei Di's situation, Xiaoming began to discuss the details of the enthronement ceremony with the two of them. Now a more prominent problem is that King Zhao does not have a palace. It was obviously too late to build a palace in a month, so the three decided to hold the enthronement ceremony in King Zhao Prefecture. After a discussion compared with the Qi Wangfu, the King Zhao Fu'ai is very large in scale, and is divided into front and rear halls, and the rear hall can be used as a temporary court hall in addition to the courtroom for discussing politics. There are also cumbersome issues such as the arrangement of the first emperor's concubines and concubines. Xiaoming was also helpless about this, so he simply handed the matter over to concubine Zhen. These concubines may be a little dissatisfied with his arrangement due to their seniority, but concubine Zhen personally manages them. Even if they have an opinion, they have to endure it. After all, concubine Zhen is the Empress Dowager after he ascends the throne. After deciding on these details, the two left the palace. Because Fiji is proficient in the process of the enthronement ceremony, he will be responsible for the arrangement of the entire enthronement sequence this month, while Pang Yukin can only be responsible for conveying the news of Xiaoming's enthronement to other vassal kings. 5 days later, Zhizhao King Yuang fell silent after sending off the messenger from King Zhao. When Princess Yuang saw King Yuang like this, she asked in confusion, Your Highness, what happened? Xiaoming is about to ascend the throne, and the emperor really gave him the edict. King Yuang sighed slowly. Concubine Yuang shook her head gently, and she said, During the Chang'an rebellion, the concubine said that the emperor would definitely pass on the position to Xiaoming. Now, which prince in this world can turn the tide? Princess has always been smart, but I guess it right this time. If it wasn't for the help of the princess over the years, this king would have lost his life because of his reckless temper. King Yuang looked at Princess Yuang with friendship in his eyes. Concubine Yuang showed a faint smile. The whole world knew that King Yuang was irritable, but they didn't know that King Yuang was the only one who favored her. Then what is your highness going to do? Princess Yuang asked. Thinking of this, King Yuang's face showing a hint of panic. The third brother is already dead. He is not Xiaoming's opponent. How can I be Xiaoming's opponent? And I promise the emperor, no matter who ascends the throne, I will be loyal to the royal family. His royal highness said it very well. Concubine Yuang took the hand of King Yuang. Since this is the case, this time Xiaoming ascends the throne, we may go there to show our hearts. King Yuang nodded. Now that Xiaoming has Wei land, adding this king's feudal kingdom, he's equivalent to occupying half of the country in the north. So it is much easier to settle down in the north. Your highness is wrong. Isn't King Kang's title also in the hands of Xiaoming? Now Xiaoming has the power of the 4 kingdoms. Princess Yuang smiled at the same time. The envoy from King Zhao was driven out by King Yan from the city of Bazhao in the palace of King Yan. King Yan jumped like thunder. Xiaoming child, do you really think that the world today is still the world of the Great Yu Kingdom? Do you think this country will always be your Zhao family's final say? King Yan growled. The officials and generals in the palace were silent one by one, and no one dared to touch the bat at this time. After venting the anger in his heart, King Yan sneered, Isn't he going to be enthroned? This king will give him a surprise. The generals will obey the order, and you will call the army immediately. Now Xiaoming has made it clear that he is not going to take Wei Di. If you spit it out, this king will not believe that he can stop our coalition of Yan, Zhao and Liang. Chapter 631 The Anger of the King of Chu. Linen City at noon. Bursts of beautiful orchestral sounds came from the Chu Palace in Linen City. The main hall of the palace was full of guests. Sitting on both sides were officials and generals of Chu state, as well as 2 other people who stood out. This was because they were different from the people of Deu state. The 2 were none other than Li Cha and Baishi Li. After Jinling City and his party, they came to Linen City, and they would probably spend a long time in Linen City after that. The 2 messengers, as long as you can train this king's army like the Qi king's army, this king will never treat them badly. After 3 rounds of drinking, the king of Chu was so drunk that his eyes were hazy, and he felt unhappy and wanted to spit it out. Although he formed an alliance with Xiao Ming, he was really aggrieved. If it wasn't for the delayed arrival of King Zhao's artillery and muskets, why would he be so aggrieved now that most of the southern prefectures and counties are in his hands? His ambitions have grown more and more, and he has longed for the picture of his own unification of the great Yu kingdom. Richard enjoyed the delicious food in the palace, and from time to time he translated the words of the King of Chu to Brazil. This time, the King of Chu reached an agreement with the French governor Olcaso, who was in charge of East Asian affairs. The French obtained the exclusive trading rights of the Chu state, and established a trading port between the Great Yu state and the Annan state, while the French sold firearms to the King of Chu, and dispatched officers to train the troops of the Chu state. And Brazil was the instructor hired by the King of Chu at a high cost. Every month, the King of Chu had to pay a salary of 1,000 taels of silver to Brazil, and at the same time, he also paid Li Cha's translation fee of 500 taels per month. Li Cha translated the words of the King of Chu, and Brazil frowned and said, "The King of Chu, who respects gold, your current firearms are too poor. With arquebuses and artillery with a range of only 500 meters, you cannot defeat King Qi. The messenger is joking. Xiao Ming is also using these firearms. It's just that this king's army training is not as good as his." The King of Chu didn't realize anything yet. Basil frowned, and he said, "King of Chu, don't you understand yet? You may have been fooled by this King of Qi. We learned from the Dutch that King Qi's army was equipped with flintlock guns. Their artillery has a range of 3 or 4 miles, and they also have field artillery, so the difference between your weapons is not a little bit." "Sufa guns? Field guns? What are these things?" the King of Chu asked in confusion. Brazil showed a look of contempt. To him, there was no difference between the indigenous people of this place and the Americas and Africa. Although they have a large population, their rulers are still very ignorant. They do not understand science and have no faith. They just oppress their own people tyrannically and brutally, but they are happy to see such a ruler, because it is good for them to benefit from it. This flintlock gun is a more powerful firearm than an arquebus. It not only has a long range, but also has a fast reloading speed. It is also more suitable for fighting in rainy days. Field guns are very convenient guns. The musketeers advance and are ready to enter the battlefield. Brazil lay briefly introduced. "This time I came to your country with firearms for self-defense. This is the flintlock gun." After saying that, Basili stood up and presented a short-barreled flintlock pistol to the King of Chu. The King of Chu was completely sober at this time. He picked up the flintlock gun and glanced at it, and immediately understood where the difference was. Then his surprise turned into bizarre anger. "Damn! Xiao Ming has been deceiving this king." The King of Chu roared. The officials and generals in the main hall were also displeased when they heard the words, and they were obviously scolding Xiao Ming. Li Chuan, the son of the King of Chu, and the 3rd prince were sitting on the left and right sides of the King of Chu, when Li Chuan fanned the flames and said, "Father, this Xiao Ming is simply too vicious. The last time he fought against the Dutch, his sons and ministers suffered a disastrous defeat. Xiao Ming's head is to blame. If he hadn't sold us this kind of artillery, how could he have lost? The last fiasco made Li Chuan lose face, and now he finally found an excuse." Although he scolded Xiao Ming in his words, the excitement in his eyes could not be concealed. The King of Chu looked at Li Chuan and said slowly, "Father, the king is wrong to blame you. I'm not afraid of my father's mistakes, and I should be wronged. I just hope that my father will stop trusting people in the royal family. Xiao Ming is so cunning, and others are probably the same." Li Chuan looked at the 3rd prince and said, "After King Zhao established the 13 princes, they established a 3rd prince as their king. If they were based on the honor and inferiority, they should be called the 3rd prince as the emperor. It's just the fact that the 3rd prince is just a puppet." But even so, Li Chuan is still wary of the 3rd prince in his heart. This country of Chu belonged to him. How could it be someone else's turn to meddle in it? Li Chuan pointed out that Sang's words of scolding were heard by the 3rd prince, but the third prince thought he couldn't hear it. He still ate the vegetables and drank wine, as if what Li Chuan said had nothing to do with him. While everyone was scolding Xiaoming because of the firearm, a postmaster came to the door and said, "His Royal Highness, the 800 miles from Qingzhou is urgent." Qingzhou. The king of Chu became more and more angry when he heard the words, and he said to the civil and martial arts of the Manchu dynasty, "Hey, this king wants to see what tricks Xiaoming is playing, and present it." The postmaster heard the words and forwarded the letter from Qingzhou to the king of Chu. The king of Chu took the letter and tore it open for a look. After just one glance, he threw the letter on the ground. His face turned from red to purple. Li Chuan glanced carefully at the king of Chu. He picked up the letter on the ground and glanced at it and was surprised. "Xiaoming is going to be enthroned." When the voice came, the third prince, who was pretending to be nothing, froze for a while, and then he ate quietly by himself. It's just that there was an unnoticeable smile on the corner of his mouth. He is no longer vigilant against Xiaoming, nor hates Xiaoming, and no longer has suspicion and jealousy among princes. After living in Linen for a year, the cruel reality made him understand that he is nothing more than a dog of the king of Chu. What kind of throne, what kind of country is nothing but a mirror for him? He only complained that he was blinded by the throne and ended up like this from the time he left Chang'an. He knew that Xiao Wangsun would pass the throne to Xiaoming, and now that Xiaoming ascended the throne, he felt relieved and relaxed. Xiaoming even ordered us to participate in the enthronement ceremony. "It's a joke," Li Chuan said angrily. "Father, it is better to imitate Xiaoming's bombardment of Jinling City with his son's opinion. It is a great gift to him." The king of Chu gasped violently. Xiaoming's ascension to the throne meant that his ambition was in the world. This was a denial of the third prince he had established. Although Li Chuan's statement made him a little impulsive, he understood that he was not with Xiaoming yet. When the face is torn, although Xiaoming did not give him the best firearms, it was enough to deal with other vassal kings. Chapter 632. This king has never received a letter from Qingzhou. The king of Chu suppressed the anger in his heart and said Li Chuan understood. He threw the letter from Qingzhou in the charcoal basin on one side, and the letter turned to ashes in the flames. The king of Chu continued, "Now the situation in the north is complicated. Even if Xiaoming can defeat King Zhao, King Yan and King Liang will inevitably be severely damaged and cannot go south immediately. We should strengthen our armaments during this time and rely on the danger of the Yangtze River to reject foreign enemies." "Yes, Your Highness," all the ministers said in unison. Li Cha and Beishi sat upright and looked at the officials. They also stood up and bowed to the king of Chu. Now that they had the king of Chu's salary, they naturally wanted to serve the king of Chu. Qingzhou in the hasty preparations. There are only 7 days left for the enthronement ceremony. During this time, Fiji has arranged all the enthronement procedures properly, and Pang Yukan has also passed all the news to the various kings. After waiting for 20 days, King Yuang took Princess Yang into Qingzhou City, and at the same time came the envoy sent by King Weinan, which was basically the same as what they guessed. Whether it was King Chu, King Yan, King Zhao or King Liang, they all turned a blind eye to the enthronement ceremony. Not only that, King Yan, King Liang and King Zhao respectively sent troops to form a chaotic army to Yunzhou, which is clearly to show Xiaoming some color. His Royal Highness, the Nanzhang army and the Dengzhou army left a total of 30,000 people to guard the cities of the 13 states. And the remaining 50,000 people rushed to Yunzhou City, while the Yaozhou army dispatched all cavalry to Yunzhou City. "Come on, plus the cuirassiers from Qingzhou, we have 50,000 cavalry at our disposal this time." In the Qingzhou camp, Niu Ben told Xiaoming all the layout of the Fengguo army. He was about to arrive at the enthronement ceremony, but the three kings started a crusade at this time, and he had to deal with it. In taking advantage of this opportunity, he is also preparing to fight a tough battle to let the three kings' allied forces hurt their vitality. As he has been thinking, the current situation cannot be changed without a decisive battle in the north through a meat grinder. Now that the Japanese country has crossed eastward, the barbarians are aggressively pressing in the north again, and the Western powers are now intervening in the south. He must at least end the civil strife in the north and have a stable development environment, otherwise a country in war will only consume and cannot bring revolutionary change. The reason why Britain was able to complete the Industrial Revolution first was due to long-term accumulation, and the other was not unrelated to having a stable social environment far away from the European continent. So he chose to take the throne now because of many factors. Niu Ben's words reassured Xiaoming. He said, "The city of Yunzhou originally had 10,000 troops from Yunzhou, plus 10,000 troops from Qingzhou, and now 60,000 people are added. There are 80,000 troops in the city. in addition to the 130,000 cavalry, most of the troops of Fango are here. After a pause, he said to Niu Ben, Captain Niu, this king has ordered you to be the general of the Western expedition to unify the overall situation. This time, you must block the Three King coalition outside the city of Yunzhou, and make no mistake. Niu Ben clasped his fists and said, Don't worry, Your Highness, the old minister will never let them cross Yunzhou city half a step. Well, in addition to this, the battle is to destroy the Three Kings' troops with all their strength, so that they will never come back. Xiao Ming said sternly, for him, the essence of war is to destroy the living force of the opponent. That was the purpose of Bai Kikung's killing of 400,000 Zhao troops back then, and since then Zhao state has no power to resist according to the information provided by Wang Zhuan. At this time, the combined army of King Yan, King Zhao and King Liang totaled 350,000, of which King Yan sent 180,000 troops, King Liang sent 130,000 troops, and King Zhao sent 40,000 cavalry. Xiao Ming was a little shocked when he learned that so many troops were marching towards Yunzhou city, but fortunately, the Great Yu Kingdom always lacked cavalry for him. He didn't worry about the infantry, because in front of firearms these feudal armies with traditional swords were not opponents at all. The only thing he worried about was the cavalry. But now that the Yaozhou army and the King's Hao cuirassiers have merged together, he is not too worried. In terms of the well-equipped equipment and the training of the soldiers, he believes that his cavalry can stop the 60,000 cavalry from the prefectures and counties near Yunzhou city destroy. After instructing Niu Ben, Xiao Ming and a group of generals conducted many deductions against the sand table of Yunzhou city. Yunzhou city is the gateway to King Zhao, and as long as Yunzhou city is captured, they can go directly to King Zhao. It is because of this that they will Chenbin Yunzhou city, which is the same as when the barbarians prepared to take Yunzhou city. After formulating a war plan, Xiao Ming returned to King Zhao city. This time he was not the only one involved in the war. King Yuang came to King Zhao to prepare for an audience. Before he came to the barracks, concubine Yuang met concubine Zhen first, and vaguely mentioned King Yang's attitude. After he had a scruple in his heart, he arranged to meet King Yang at noon to clarify some words. Generally speaking, now in the Great Yu Kingdom, he may only have two real allies, one is King Yuang, and the other is King Weinan. However, compared to the support that King Weinan needs to get through marriage, King Yuang's support may be simpler. Although King Yuang is short-tempered and greedy for pleasure, he is also very simple, and he will go with whoever is the real emperor. When he arrived at the palace, Xiao Ming directly entered the main hall, and after a while, King Yuang was led by Jin Dafu to the main hall. My nephew, seeing Xiao Ming, King Yuang walked towards Xiao Ming with a big laugh, and his burly figure made Xiao Ming quite stressed. Uncle Fourth Emperor. Xiao Ming also smiled. Now that he has not yet ascended the throne, the etiquette is business as usual, but compared to the rudeness of the past, Xiao Ming can still see that there is a hint of caution in King Yang's behavior. Inviting King Yang to sit down, Xiao Ming got straight to the point. He gestured to Jin Dafu, who then brought Xiao Wangxun's widow over. This edict was also of concern to King Yuang all the time. He had to confirm the authenticity of the edict, so when he got the edict, he looked at it carefully, and after a while he said, This is the handwriting of the emperor, this edict is for use. Satin is also unique in the palace. That's right. After saying this, King Yuang felt relieved. He got up and said to Xiao Ming, From now on, it will be dispatched by my nephew. When concubine Yuang met concubine Zhen, she had already mentioned the meaning of King Yuang's surrender, so Xiao Ming was not surprised, and he was not polite, and said directly, I think the fourth uncle also knows about King Yan, and King Liang and King Zhao joined forces to come to crusade. It's the king's business. This king has heard about this, and my nephew is at ease. This rebellious king should raise troops and attack him with his nephew. King Yuang said angrily. Xiao Ming nodded with satisfaction. He didn't have a lot of soldiers, but with King Yuang, there were quite a few, so he would feel a lot easier. It's just that when he mentioned this, he didn't let King Yang participate in the war in Yunzhou city. P.S. The snail has been updated a little in the past few days, and I am really sorry. It is not that the snail is lazy, but it is indeed the snail's own fault. Because some comments will always affect the snail's judgment on the plot, the snail will be confused. I think about it. After a few days, Snail gradually figured it out. Next, Snail will continue to write according to his own ideas. Each has his own love for radish and cabbage. Snail cannot meet everyone's needs, so he can only remember the original intention of writing the book. Chapter 633 Marriage. Xi's Union State. King Yuang showed a surprised look. Xiao Ming nodded lightly. Exactly, This time King Liang dispatched a large army, and Liang Guo must be empty inside. At this time, if the emperor took the opportunity to take Bingzhou, he could easily take it. It's just that the nephew of the alliance of the three kings in the city of Yunzhou can stop it. King Yuang was a little worried. Now that he has Xiao Ming as his army, he naturally has to consider Xiao Ming. Xiao Ming said to himself, Uncle Sanhurong, don't worry, even if I can't defeat them in the wild, I can defend Yunzhou city with these forces, and when I learn that Bingzhou is besieged, King Liang will definitely lead an army back. Uncle and I can set up an ambush on the way back to King Liang's army and annihilate them in one fell swoop, and the lack of King Liang's army in the three kings' allied army will inevitably drop in morale at that time. My nephew is thoughtful, and the uncle will do it. King Yuang said. Xiao Ming heaved a sigh of relief. King Yuang's resignation surprised him a bit. This was the greatest good news before he ascended the throne. Although King Yuang's ability to manage fiefs is not very good, he still has more than 100,000 soldiers under his command, and these soldiers can become one of the factors affecting the war at this time. However, when King Yuang was attached, he couldn't help expressing it. After all, people's hearts were unpredictable. This time King Yuang was loyal to Xiao Wangsun's edict. Reassure King Yuang. So he said, it is reported that the emperor's uncle is currently in short supply of military salaries and provisions, and his nephew has already prepared 300,000 taels of silver and 500,000 stone of food for the emperor. Compared with these materials, the emperor's uncle can be in a hurry. King Yuang was overjoyed when he heard the words, and he was worried about this. Since the famine occurred in Yongdi 2 years ago, the Qinglong king gathered a rebellion, and the barbarians looted and slaughtered Yongdi, which made the treasury of Yongdi very difficult. Because of this, he knew that he was not Xiao Ming's opponent at all. My nephew, it's still you who think about me. This time, the uncle has tried his best to take Bingzhou to you. King Yuang laughed. Xiao Ming showed a smile. He was also helpless. He knew about King Yuang's current situation. Without the support of these salaries and provisions, King Yuang's army would probably run away halfway, because the purpose of the people of the Great Yu Kingdom is very simple. It is to have a mouthful of food. If they have no food to eat, most of them choose to be deserters. This is why the ancient army had the habit of looting, especially when there was insufficient food and grass. The generals in the army often indulged the soldiers to loot the captured cities, because in this way the soldiers had the desire to attack the city. In this way, my nephew is waiting for the good news from the uncle. Xiao Ming said to King Yuang, but he was prepared to send King Yuang to attack Bingzhou this time. If King Yuang captured Bingzhou, everyone would be very happy. From then on, King Liang's general vigor would be greatly damaged. If King Yuang could not capture it, he would be able to surround Wei and save Zhao, which would be enough to help him defeat the coalition of the three kingdoms. After discussing the matter, the two chatted for a while. At the end of the enthronement ceremony, there were still the ceremony of worshipping the heavens and the worship of the ancestral temple. This matter naturally required King Yuang to come forward. After all, King Yuang now also belongs to the highest-ranking elder among the royal clansmen, and King Yuang readily accepts this. After settling this matter, King Yuang returned happily. At this time, he was sincerely happy. This time, he expressed his loyalty to Xiao Ming and got so many materials. He seemed to return to the time when Xiao Wangsun was in power. At that time, Xiao Wangsun also always will solve his immediate needs. After sending King Yuang away, Xiao Ming got up and walked towards the side hall of the palace. The matter of King Yuang and King Weinan needed to be hanged at this time. The messenger sent by the king of Weinan was chatting with concubine Zhen in the side hall. However, unlike the general mission, this time it was Princess Li, the princess of Weinan, who came to King Zhao Niang. Speaking of which, we haven't seen each other for 7 or 8 years. The last time we met was on the emperor's 50th birthday. In the side hall, concubine Zhen sat in the main seat, and below concubine Zhen sat the Princess Li of Weinan. This Li's age is similar to that of concubine Zhen, and even though the years have passed, it is difficult to hide her natural beauty. Holding one hand with concubine Zhen, Li's demeanor is intimate, as if she and concubine Zhen have been close friends for many years. Li Shi's words made concubine Zhen echo the past, and her eyes couldn't help but have a hint of melancholy. In a short period of time, things were right and wrong, which made people lament, but she knew the role she should play at this time, so she smiled and said, "Sister said what's more, Ben Gong remembers the time when my sister brought Zuir to Chang'an. Even though Zuir was only 12 years old at that time, she was already a little beauty. I don't know what kind of son-in-law my sister has chosen for her now." Niang Niang actually still remembers this ghost girl. Hey, don't mention it, This girl has been spoiled by His Highness, and at this age, she is not a person who can't be seen. Just say that today's princes are all waste, if she will marry someone who can be as arrogant as His Royal Highness King Qi. Li said, seemingly unintentionally. Concubine Zhen rolled her eyes, and she said, it's understandable that beauties have loved heroes since ancient times. Now that Ming'er already has a concubine, Ben Gong thinks that he should also choose a side concubine for him to continue his descendants. After all, this royal family is right and wrong. More inheritance can ensure that the incense will not be extinguished. At that time, this palace also thought about Zui'er, but I was afraid that Zui'er would not look down on this position of concubine and let it go. Niang Niang is worrying too much. Now that His Royal Highness is about to ascend the throne, this concubine will soon become an imperial concubine. This status is worthy of her. The only thing I'm afraid is that the Empress will not look down on this girl. Li Shi smiled. Flowers. Concubine Zhen also stretched her brows. This Li's meaning is very clear. Fei Yu'er is the queen, but her daughter is to be a royal concubine. This is the bargaining chip. Although she never intervened in government affairs, she also knew that it would be difficult for Xiaoming to quickly stabilize the north without a few capable helpers, so she said, I like Zuier's girl at first sight. Since this is the case, Ben Gong has agreed to this matter. I hope my sister will send Zuier to this king's house someday. Niang Niang, it's simple. After returning home, my sister will send a letter to His Highness and ask him to send someone to bring Zuier. Li Shi was full of joy. This imperial concubine is the first person under the Empress, and she is not wrong to her daughter. The two talked for a while, and then Mrs. Li got up and left. As soon as Mrs. Li left, Xiaoming walked in from outside the side hall. Concubine Zhen glanced at him and said, this matter has been decided for you by the concubine. The king of Huainan wanted her daughter to be the imperial concubine, but now it seems that the only person who can marry you is the king of Huainan. As long as the king of Huainan can respect his orders, this imperial concubine will not lose anything. That's the only way it can be now. This king can count on him to contain King Chu and King Yan. Xiaoming said slowly. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 634. In the side hall, the mother and son stood opposite each other at this time. Concubine Zhen took Xiaoming and sat down, and she said, you are a lot more sensible than before, so the concubine will feel at ease, and you will be the emperor soon. From now on, you must consider the overall situation of the world, not for the sake of one person. Selfish, after all. What you hold in your hands is the world. After a pause, she continued, now the Great Yu Kingdom is in turmoil and it is at stake. The people of Chang'an City all know that the Great Yu Kingdom building is going to collapse. Now that your father and emperor have left this mess to you, it really makes you wronged, but don't blame your royal father. It is rare for him to keep the world from chaos all these years, but in the end he misunderstood King Zhao. After all, Xiaoming nodded. Concubine Zhen's words are not alarmist. Even if he destroys the kingdom of Yan, Liang and Zhao, most of the entire north will be rotten by then. It will take a long time to recover from recuperation, and he will also consume a lot of financial resources to maintain stability in the north. But even so, war is still unavoidable, he said. If it is not broken, it will not stand. The boy might make the Great Yu Kingdom change to the sky again. Concubine Zhen had a smile in her eyes. She originally only wanted Xiaoming to live a peaceful life in the fief, but now he has taken a completely different path. But no matter where Xiaoming goes, she will still support Xiaoming as before. After scrutinizing Xiaoming for a while, she said, in this case, after you ascend the throne, the concubine will discuss the matter of the concubine for you, but there is one more thing that the concubine has to tell you. Where will Zuier live after coming here? Xiaoming was stunned for a moment. He understood that concubine Zhen was talking about the palace. After all, the palace was too small and crowded to accommodate too many people. After hesitating for a while, he said, there is no way to do it before ascending the throne, but the boy has decided to build a palace. There is an idle private square in the south of Qingzhou City, and the boy is going to build it there. In this way, the concubine will feel at ease. This imperial city is not only a resting place for the emperor, but also a place for ministers to work. It is definitely not a child's play. Concubine Zhen reminded. Xiaoming nodded. Now the Qingzhou government office is indeed a bit crowded, and many institutions are mixed together. After all, many departments have been added after the political reform, and these departments need separate offices. Therefore, after considering all the circumstances, he decided to build the Imperial City, which was also a renovation of Qingzhou City. For him, the traditional private square model could no longer meet the needs of industrial development. Now it is necessary to break the traditional village settlement and establish an urban structure suitable for industrial development. Moreover, the transformation of the city can also stimulate the development of commerce in Qingzhou, which is 3 birds with 1 stone. For him briefly said this matter, he left from concubine Zhen. He needed to inform the construction camp about this matter, and at the same time he also gave the construction camp a plan of the Imperial City for him. The construction of the Imperial City needs to take into account the power problem. After all, if Qingzhou builds a power plant in the future, he does not want the Imperial City to be messed up again, so it is better to reserve this part in advance. In the afternoon, concubine Zhen officially sent a pardon order to Princess Weinan. This pardon order was naturally about Kuizuir. With this pardon order, the matter of Nafei was officially settled on the same day. Xiao Ming managed to deal with Qing Yuang and King Weinan at the same time. Although his mood was a little complicated, he was finally relieved, because with the help of the 2 vassal kings, he would be more relaxed. Ming once again threw himself into the preparations for the enthronement ceremony, and now there is not much time left for his enthronement. The only thing he is worried about now is the battle in Yunzhou City, because this will determine the future situation in the north. Yunzhou City, with the influx of the Southern Expedition Army and the Dengzhou Army, soldiers in groups of 3 or 5 can be seen everywhere in this small city, and the people in the city also have a premonition that a war is coming, because they have never seen so many soldiers stationed in the city. Yunzhou City, even in the Battle of Jizhou 2 years ago, the soldiers in this city were only 30,000 to 50,000. At this time, the atmosphere in the Yunzhou camp was solemn. 2 days ago, Niu Ben arrived here with the seal of the General Xiangxi. Once the general arrived, it also meant that the war was not far away. There are still 3 days before His Royal Highness's enthronement ceremony. If His Highness's enthronement ceremony is missed due to the war in Yunzhou City, none of you will be able to bear it, but if you can win a big victory this time, you will definitely judge your merits when you go back. Reward. Niu Ben said loudly. Lu Fei, Luo Xin, Luo Hong, Qi Guanggai, Bai Mu and other generals were all in the camp, and they exchanged glances with enthusiasm. After the enthronement ceremony, Xiao Ming will officially become the emperor of the Great Yu Kingdom, and conquering other vassal kings is tantamount to crusade against rebellion, and after ascending the throne, it must be the promotion of officials and generals. As the earliest generals who followed Xiao Ming, they were naturally the main force in this promotion, but before that, they had to ensure that the enthronement ceremony could proceed smoothly. After all, King Yan, King Liang and King Zhao did not want Xiao Ming to ascend the throne, especially King Zhao. Once Xiao Ming ascended the throne, he would lose the advantage of holding the emperor to command a prince's 350,000 people. These 3 vassal kings seem to have the idea of destroying our land. Luo Hong looked at the sand table with a solemn expression. He had never experienced such a large-scale war. The scouts who went to investigate came back and reported that the army of the 3 kings was covering the sky and the sun. In addition to the soldiers who directly participated in the battle, there were also long dragon-like people who transported food. Now the forward of the 3 kings' allied forces has arrived at Yunzhou City to set up camp, but the follow-up troops are still coming. Among them, King Zhao's 40,000 cavalry also tried to bypass Yunzhou City and go deep into the hinterland to kill, burn and loot, but they had to give up this plan when the cavalry led by Bai Mu was besieged and blocked, because they find that no matter where they go, they will always be discovered first, and then they will risk no return if they venture further. We're not afraid of another 350,000. When the time comes, we will pull out all the field guns and smash them into mud. Lu Fei roared. Luo Xin raised his brows. This time, most of the field guns were gathered in his hands. He was gearing up for a big fight. This time, 90% of King Zhao's ammunition reserves are here. Niu Ben frowned, and he said, Your Highness told me before I left that I would do my best to destroy the coalition of the 3 kings, so this time you don't need to be merciful, you have to fight hard, and this time there are 6 more thousands of rifled flintlock guns are installed, but because of the smokeless gunpowder mentioned by His Highness, black powder has to be used temporarily because of the slow production, but even this is enough to defeat King Yan's musketeers. P.S. Many book friends worry that the snail has been updated twice, and the snail will guarantee that it will not. As I said yesterday, The snail just adjusted because of its chaos, and it will be updated tomorrow. Chapter 635. 6,000 rifle guns. A burst of exclamations sounded in the camp, and the excitement of the generals was beyond words. They had already tested the excellent performance of this weapon on the battlefield when they conquered the Wayland. These muskets not only have a long range and great power, but also are easy to reload and have a fast rate of fire. Ordinary flintlock guns can fire 2 to 3 rounds a minute, but this rifle can fire twice as many bullets per minute, which is very important for flintlock guns that rely on shooting density to kill enemies. General, give us these 6,000 flintlock guns for the Southern Expedition Army. The last general is willing to play the front. Liu Fei said to Niu Ben. Qingyan was immediately unhappy when he heard the words, General Liu, you are not authentic. Why is this striker you? This flintlock gun is also yours. Even if we don't have this rifled flintlock gun, our Deng Zhao army is willing to play the forward. That's not right. Why are all the good things done by your Nanzhang army and Deng Zhao army? This war in Wei has made yours cheap. Now it's our turn. Di Ying, governor of Yunzhao, said that is, the things that can't be in the limelight are always yours of the Nanzhang army and the Deng Zhao army. This time, we should also be included. The generals will lead you to say a word, and no one will let anyone else. Everyone shut up. Niu Ben roared when he saw this. All the generals immediately kept the words in their mouths, each with a serious look on their faces. He glanced around at the eager General Niu Ben and said solemnly, this king knows that you are eager to fight now, but there must be no mistakes in this battle. This is not the time for you to fight for merit. I will put the ugly words first. If it is this battle, whoever dares to disobey the order, in order to rush and disrupt the formation, Ben will cut off his head. Yes, General. The generals responded in unison, nodding with satisfaction. Niu Ben looked at the sand table. This sand table is exactly the terrain between Yunzhao City and Kaizhou City. This time, the troops of King Yan, King Zhao, and King Liang rely on Bing Zhao, and the army will go out in Yunzhao, 20 miles outside the city, to set up camp. Its momentum cannot be described as vast. Although you have also gathered most of Fenguo's troops in Yunzhao this time, Niu Ben still dare not take it lightly, because this will be a battle that will determine the situation in the north for Fenguo. If this move wiped out the 350,000 coalition forces, the offensive and defensive situation in the north will be completely changed from now on, and Fenguo will get rid of the passive defense situation. Liu Fei, I ordered you to take charge of the central army. Luo Hong, I ordered you to take charge of the left army. Yi Qingyan, I ordered you to take charge of the right army. Bai Mu, you led 20,000 cavalry to protect the left wing of the infantry. Qi Guanggai, you led 10,000 cavalry guards the right flank of the infantry, and Luo Xin follows this general to build an artillery position. Niu Ben gave orders one by one. The generals who heard the order all bowed as they should. Union camp. While Niu Ben was setting up the battlefield, there was a quarrel over the upcoming war. This time King Yan sent his younger brother Kui Wai to command the entire army. King Zhao sent General Zhaoing and King Liang's army. It was led by the second prince himself. Although the three kings have reached an agreement to attack together, the soldiers stationed in the coalition camp are clearly divided. Not only that, even the food and grass are only responsible for each army. Why should our army of Yan State be the vanguard, while your army is watching the show from behind? Since it is a coalition army, of course it is the same advance and retreat. Kui Wai looked at the second prince and Zhaoang dissatisfiedly in the tent. Hearing this, Zhaoang said, this coalition is led by the state of Yan. Naturally, the state of Yan will take the lead, and if you capture King Zhao, it will be the most profitable for your state of Yan, isn't it? Kui Wai blushed suddenly, and he said angrily, that's a bad statement. This time the army is not here for Yan's own selfishness. I wonder who would benefit from sitting and watching Xiaoming become stronger and stronger? Wait for the belly of a gentleman with the heart of a villain. General Kui said that our goal this time is to destroy Xiaoming and prevent him from becoming emperor. Is it because General Zhaoang's reluctance to contribute is to admit that the 13th prince is not orthodox? The second prince said lightly, thinking of the second prince Xiaoming. A deep hatred would well up in his heart. If Xiaoming hadn't been chasing after the assassination, he wouldn't have been demoted to Bezhao and suffered so much this time. When King Liang dispatched the army, he did not let him be the main general at first, but at his strong request, King Liang finally compromised. For him, if Xiaoming didn't die for a day, it would be difficult for him to solve the hatred in his heart. Zhaoang was run on by Kui Wai and the second prince. His face changed, and he finally said, the 13th prince is naturally orthodox, and Xiaoming's ascension to the throne is treason. That's it. The second prince sneered, "I hope the two of you can help me when the war starts tomorrow." Although Zhao Ang was unwilling, in the face of the aggressive situation of the two, he had to accept the matter, but the words of King Zhao were still in his ears before leaving. "We'll try to reduce casualties at this time." The second prince and Kui Wai looked at each other, and the two of them wanted to miss each other, and they were a little worried about each other. In the early morning of the next day, smoke billows from Yunzhao City, and the coalition camp also begins to bury the fire to make meals. Then the coalition army slowly approached Yunzhao City with the sound of war drums. At this time, a hydrogen balloon in Yunzhao City has been lifted into the air, and the semaphore on the hydrogen balloon continues to transmit the dynamics of the coalition forces to Niu Ben on the city wall. The semaphore hand said they observed that 150 artillery pieces of the coalition were being pushed towards Yunzhao City. Niu Ben said to Luo Xin, "General, it seems that this time King Yan and King Liang have taken out their family assets." Luo Xin said. Niu Ben nodded, and he said, "I will hand over these artillery pieces to you, and destroy them all." "Yes, General." Luo Xin nodded, and then he went down from the tower to a highland outside the city. This highland was equipped with 100 artillery pieces, and the corresponding land was slightly higher. There is also an artillery position outside the city of Yunzhao. Lu Fei, Luo Hong, and your King Yan led the left, center, and right armies to form a horizontal team, and these horizontal teams consisted of small horizontal teams of 200 people on the open land outside Yunzhao City. The two armies got closer and closer, and the atmosphere on the battlefield became more and more dignified. An hour later, the allied army of the Three Kings stopped at a distance of 300 meters from the army of Yunzhao City, and the musketeers in front began to advance towards the army of Yunzhao City. This time, King Yan sent all 20,000 musketeers in total, while King Liang sent all 10,000 musketeers out of the country. Hundreds of thousands of troops were lined up, and the densely packed soldiers looked like ant colonies from a high altitude for both sides. This battle is not too conspiracy, but a head-to-head confrontation between the armies of both sides. Rumble, as the coalition musketeers continued to come to Yunzhao City, the sound of the war drums became more and more vigorous, and the field artillery also roared in the sound of the war drums. Chapter 636 Fire and Sword. P.S. There will be another chapter soon. Boom boom boom. Hundreds of field artillery simultaneously began to bombard the coalition artillery that was constantly approaching the Yunzhao army. When the coalition musketeers kept approaching the Yunzhao army, these coalition artillery hidden in the army also took the opportunity to move forward, but all this could not be concealed from the flag bearers who were observing from a height of hundreds of meters. The location of the enemy's artillery was constantly informed by the semaphore, and Luo Xin then directed the artillery to fire in the direction pointed out by the semaphore. After a salvo, the coalition soldiers covering the artillery fell. The coalition artillery was completely exposed to Luo Xin's eyes at this time, and then more violent artillery bombarded the direction of the coalition artillery, and screams suddenly sounded. The tragic situation of the artillerymen quickly reached the ears of Kui Wai and the second prince, and the two changed their expressions when they heard the words. At this time, a strange color flashed in their eyes when they looked at the strange thing rising from Yunzhao City. "This is the rumored hot air balloon?" Kui Wai asked. The second prince nodded. "Yes, I saw it once in Chang'an. It is said that during the Battle of Jizhao, the King Zhao army also used this hot air balloon to investigate the situation in the barbarian army HMPH. If I remember correctly, there is a hot air balloon in Chang'an City. There is one. This is what Xiaoming gave to his father back then. It should be in the hands of King Zhao now." The second prince was dissatisfied. This time King Zhao sent 40,000 cavalry, otherwise, how could they be so passive? Now Zhao Ang's ears looked at his nose and his heart, as if he didn't know anything. Now all the people who have lost are King Yan and King Liang, and there seems to be some joy in his heart. Kui Wai and the second prince were naturally distressed. The strange-looking artillery on the raised high ground kept firing round after round of shells, and now their artillery couldn't fight back at all. However, at this time, they gradually realized that the range of their artillery was not as good as that of the Qi army. It's just that the suppression of the artillery did not make them give up their plans to attack. On the contrary, they ordered the army to move on. After all, their soldiers were more than twice as many as Qi's army now. Instead of defending the city, the Qi army is fighting against them in the wild, which is giving them the opportunity to annihilate them in one fell swoop. The death of thousands of artillerymen in the army of 350,000 will not affect the war at all. Rumble. The sound of the war drums became more and more urgent, and the musketeers in the coalition army were still 250 meters away from the Yunzhao army at this time. Lu Fei, who was in charge of the central army, ordered the soldiers to raise their muskets. This time, the Central Army was assigned 6,000 rifled rifles to fight against the musketeers of the coalition forces. Although he can order fire at about 400 meters, Liu Fei understands that the closer the distance, the more intensive firepower he can take advantage of, so he finally decided to order fire at 250 meters. After all, the position of 400 meters is too bad. Fire. Just as the coalition musketeers were still slowly approaching the Yunzhao army, Liu Fei finally gave the order. Bang bang bang. White smoke rose along with the flames, and the musketeers of the coalition forces who were marching intensively 200 meters away suddenly collapsed. A coalition soldier only felt something warm on his face, and then his companion fell down. Looking at the army of Yunzhao City with muskets in front of him, he suddenly felt a chill down his spine. It's just that he didn't dare to stop, because behind them were the inspectors with machetes. As long as they stepped back half a step, they would be killed on the spot, and their relatives in their hometown would also be killed together. After arriving in Bingzhou, they would be killed. Got this order. Bang bang bang. Another round of salvo. The soldiers next to the coalition soldiers fell. Another group, and the number of musketeers became less and less. Then came the third round, the fourth round. Every time there was fire and white smoke on the opposite side, they would fall a group of people. Finally, after the fifth round of salvo, some musketeers finally couldn't bear the fear of trying to escape, but they were killed by the inspector before they could run far. The scream stopped more soldiers who were trying to escape, and they bravely advanced towards Yunzhao City step by step. 150 meters, 100 meters, 70 meters, and when they reached the firing range of the arquebus, they raised the arquebus on the artillery position. Niu Ben watched the musketeers of the coalition army. At this time, his brows were wrinkled and his expression was solemn. He noticed the presence of the supervisors in the coalition army in the past. These musketeers would collapse after being damaged by 10%, but now the musketeers who came from the front were damaged by 40% and still did not retreat. Instead, they braved artillery and musket fire to a range of 70 meters. It seems that this is a tough battle. Niu Ben said in a deep voice. Luo Xin's expression was also a little surprised. This time King Yan and King Liang seemed to have made great determination. Otherwise they would not have taken such cruel measures to force the soldiers to die. Change the grape shells, let the mortars use lime shells and flowering shells, and the field guns aim at the inspectors. In order to minimize casualties, Niu Ben ordered. Yes, Luo Xin immediately ordered the semaphore hand to play the semaphore. At this time, the artillery began to change to grape bullets. When the range of the artillery was farther than that of the flintlock gun, the artillery was the main force of the war. Boom boom boom. Field artillery using grape bullets began to shell the coalition musketeers. When a grape bullet was fired, it immediately turned into a rain of bullets composed of hundreds of bullets. The musketeers who were about to shoot fell down one by one, screaming, and the ground was full of the wailing of wounded soldiers. Liu Fei's expression on the opposite side shows no mercy. They have no grievances with these soldiers, but they are enemies on the battlefield. If they don't kill them, they will be killed themselves. 70 meters is also the effective range of the flintlock. After being fired by a wave of coalition musketeers, he ordered the rifled flintlock and smoothbore flintlock to shoot at the same time. Under the fierce artillery fire and shooting, the coalition musketeers continued to fall, and finally after the loss of 70%, the coalition musketeers could no longer bear the collective rout. Death to those who retreat, roared the overseers, their machetes falling on every fleeing soldier. But the threat of death was no longer able to stop the soldiers from fleeing. Razin watched the group of inspectors with binoculars, and he ordered the artillery to be heavily bombarded by the inspectors who prevented the soldiers from retreating. Gradually, the inspectors found that they had fewer and fewer people, and they gradually lost their restraint on the army in front. Under the fierce artillery fire of the Yunzhao army, more and more soldiers scattered. Seeing this, Niu Ben let out a sigh of relief, but he sighed in his heart at the same time. If King Yan, King Liang and King Zhao could come up with such a method to deal with the barbarians, how could the barbarians bully the great Yu kingdom? So at this time, he became more and more angry with King Yan, King Liang and King Zhao. In his opinion, they were just a bunch of cruel tyrants. Chapter 637. Bastard. In the camp, Kui Wai was furious, and the dispersal of the musketeers led to chaos in the front army. Unable to allow the troops behind to charge forward and fight the Yunzhao army hand to hand, so they had to temporarily return to the main camp to fight again. The second prince's face was gloomy. It was still his idea to set up the overseer, but even so, he still failed to undo the failure. He said, "All deserters will be killed without mercy. And all the returning musketeers will be killed. Kill them all? There are only less than 2,000 musketeers left in our country of Yan. Kui Wai felt extremely distressed, and now he regretted believing the words of the second prince. If it weren't for this group of overseers and his musketeers, how could they have lost so much? You have 2,000 people left in the country of Yan, but we have not a single musketeer left in the country of Liang. Your overseer is really good, and you will not be merciless. The second prince sneered. Now that all his musketeers have been damaged, it is difficult for him to explain when he goes back. After all, whether it is Yan or Liang, the musketeers are all elites, and these elites are completely vulnerable in front of the key army. Hearing this, Kui Wai said angrily, "Second prince, what do you mean? It's not your idea that the military governor. The governor of the state of Yan supervises the army of Liang, and the governor of the state of Liang supervises the army of Yan. This is what you said." Only Zhao Ang did not suffer any losses in this battle. When he was secretly laughing, he pretended to persuade, "The two of you should stop arguing and think about how to attack the city. Even if you lose today, you will only lose 30,000 people. We still have more than 300,000 people." General Zhao is really standing and talking without back pain, and it's not your cavalry that loses. Of course you don't feel bad about it. General Zhao likes fighting so much. How about letting the black armored cavalry smash the key army's camp tomorrow? That's an idea. This musket is very slow to reload, and the distance of several hundred meters of cavalry arrives in an instant. The second prince also agreed. Zhao Ang's face changed suddenly. He said, "Don't forget that the Yunzhao army also has cavalry. If the black armored cavalry is gone, how will you deal with their cavalry this time?" The three kings' allied forces appointed King Yan as the commander-in-chief of the allied forces, and urged Wai to say, "General Zhao, this is an order." Zhao Ang heard that his face was extremely ugly, and he snorted and walked out of the tent. Both Kui Wai and the second prince showed a cruel smile when they looked at Zhao Ang's leaving figure. How could they make Zhao Ang watch the play comfortably after they lost so many people? Yunzhao army camp. Niu Ben and other generals gathered in the tent after having a simple dinner. They prepared this morning, started the battle at noon, and called Jin to close the army in the evening. Although they used the advantages of firearms to gain a lot of advantages, hundreds of soldiers were still killed and injured under the fire of the desperate coalition musketeers. This battle loss was still acceptable to them, because the coalition suffered even greater losses. General, it would be troublesome if the three kings' allied forces have been fighting this way of life. Now their musketeers should be finished, and they should use cavalry and infantry to rush to kill. Lu Fei analyzed. The generals nodded. Luo Hong said, "The distance of 300 meters is only a few breaths for the cavalry, and even the infantry can rush over in only 20 breaths." Niu Ben took it seriously. He naturally knew that if the confrontation continued like this, they would eventually lose tens of thousands of people, because once the coalition forces risked the charge and turned into hand-to-hand combat, it would be very unfavorable for them. "Don't go out, spend some time with them and sharpen their spirits," Qi Guanggai said. "General, the last commander asked to lead 10,000 cavalry to harass their baggage." Bai Mu said, "The last general is also willing to go with him." Niu Ben nodded. "Remember, their food and grass can be burned as long as they can, and at the same time, they must not be reluctant to fight." "Yes, General." Qi Guanggai and Bai Mu said in unison. Niu Ben paused for a while and continued, "This general decided to hold on for 5 days from tomorrow, and after 5 days, we will surround the coalition camp with the support of vehicles, so that we can use the advantages of firearms without worrying about it." A step-by-step charge. Lu Fei and other generals nodded their heads after hearing the words. Today, they are just tempting the musketeers of the coalition to fight against them. In their opinion, King Yan and King Liang are too confident in their musketeers, thinking that they can wait for the number of musketeers with them. One by one, in fact, these soldiers were just targets, and they only exchanged for most of the musketeers of the coalition forces at a small price. The next day, when Kui Wai, the second prince, and Zhao Ang led the army to reach the city of Yunzhao again, they found that the soldiers who had lined up in front of the city yesterday had all reached the city. While seeing this situation, Zhao Ang was naturally relieved, while the second prince and Kui Wai were gloomy. Now there are only two paths in front of them. One is to attack the city, and the other is to bypass Yunzhao city. But if they bypass Yunzhao city, it means that their food route is completely exposed under the eyes of Yunzhao city. Once the food supply is cut off, it will be a disaster for them. So after weighing it, they finally chose the first siege strategy. This time, with an army of 350,000 people, They had to get a satisfactory result. Only when they attacked the city did they realize that there was no difference between the difficulty of sieging the city and entering Yunzhou city. When the artillery on the city wall began to whistle, they knew that today would be a failure, just as they thought, when the generals were at night. They left a corpse under the city and even a brick on the city wall of Yunzhou city. Did it pry up then the second day, the third day, at the same time, when the coalition forces were still fighting fiercely under the city of Yunzhou, King Yuang's army had already arrived under the city of Bingzhou, taking advantage of the emptiness of Liang's troops. The general who led the Yongzhou army this time was none other than Chen Xinren, the family general of King Yuang, and the army that went to Bingzhou was the elite division he had trained by himself. 5,000 cavalry Liang stayed in King Yuang's fiefs bordered. After receiving the order of King Yuang, they set out from Jizhou all the way to Bingzhou. On the way, they encountered no resistance at all. General, the city of Bingzhou is ahead. A general pointed to the city in front of him and said. Chen Xinren nodded, and he said to his general, immediately have someone push the artillery up, and now His Highness King Qi is about to ascend the throne. His Highness King Yuang asked me to take down Bingzhou city. This is what King Yuang gave to the future emperor. Great gift, yes, General. The commander immediately went to inform the artillery. When he heard the words at this time, Chen Xinren looked at the city of Bingzhou, which bordered on the land of King Yuang. In the past, King Yuang and King Liang had also had many frictions here, and now they can finally attack Bingzhou city in a fair and open manner. Chapter 638 Helpless Rumors. Boom boom boom, Chen Xinren launched an attack on Bingzhou city amid the fierce artillery fire. Now the king of Liang has raised troops to attack the king of Qi, and all the elites in the country have come out. The troops of the states and counties within the state of Liang are empty, and there are only a small number of defenders in each city. Therefore, although their army was discovered by the scouts when they entered the country of Liang, the king of Liang did not assemble an army to fight among the many vassal states. King Yuang's feudal state cannot be said to be rich, but relatively speaking, the soldiers of the Yuang army have their own strengths because they defend against the barbarians all the year round. Under the power of Liang Guo's national strength, he was still on an equal footing with King Yuang, and now Liang Guo could not stop the Yuang army, who came out in full force. The artillery first smashed the gate of Bingzhou city. At this time, Chen Xinren shouted, "Soldiers, rush! The first person to enter the city will be rewarded with 1,000 taels of silver." After entering the city, there is no guilt in looting. Under the heavy reward, the soldiers of the Yuang army rushed to Bingzhou city screaming, and Chen Xinren's order to condone the looting also made these soldiers, who were usually lacking in wages and living in extreme hardship, fall into madness. Soldiers blinded by desire are terrifying, and the Yongzhou army outside the city rushed into the city gate like beasts. The Yongzhou army launched an attack from the 4 city gates at the same time. The Bingzhou army, which originally numbered only 3,000, was unable to stop the onslaught of the more than 100,000 Yongzhou army. Soon the Yongzhou army rushed into this place located in Fengguo and Liang cities between countries. Yongzhou soldiers who entered Bingzhou city quickly rushed to the city wall, killing the Bingzhou soldiers who were stubbornly resisting one by one. At the same time, most of the Yongzhou soldiers began to loot wantonly in the city. Chen Xinren rode into Bingzhou city on horseback. He looked indifferently at the soldiers who were looting. This time, the food provided by Xiaoming was only enough for them to capture Bingzhou city. It is for this reason that he condoned the looting of the soldiers, because it was the quickest way to solve the rations. After taking the city of Bingzhou, Chen Xinren set his sights on Fenzhou, which was the next city he wanted to attack. After Fenzhou was Yanzhou, and after Yanzhou was Qingzhou, where King Liang's palace was located. Just when Chen Xinren easily captured Bingzhou, the Liang Wangfu in Qingzhou was already in chaos. The news that King Yuang suddenly sent troops to cross the border had already spread here, and King Liang, who learned the news, was shocked. Why did King Yuang send troops? King Liang still can't believe that after Xiaoming captured Wei, he believed that King Yuang would definitely be wary of Xiaoming, but now things are developing in an unpredictable direction. His Royal Highness, the old minister, said that we should be wary of King Yuang's attack, but His Highness believed in the second prince's words. Now that the domestic military force is empty, Liang Guo is resting. King Liang's face turned pale. At that time, some ministers persuaded him to form an alliance with the state of Yan to first destroy King Yuang and then Su Tuzi of the state of Qi. But the envoys of the state of Yan and the lobbying of the second prince finally moved him, because King Yan promised that he would divide Yongdi and Yan'an in 16 states to him after capturing Qingzhou, and divide the captured cities equally. But now there is not one city in hand, and the city of Liang State was captured by Yongwang Akings. What should we do now? King Liang also lost his mind. His Royal Highness, let the second prince lead the army back now, or it will be too late to regret it, the officials said anxiously. King Liang wiped the sweat from his forehead. This time a negligence is the danger of destroying the country. He said, I immediately ordered the second prince to lead the army back. Yes, Your Highness. King's Hao City. When the fierce battle in Yun's Hao City was in full swing, Xiao Ming's enthronement ceremony was also held in King's Hao City in the days before his ascension to the throne. King's Hao newspapers continued to publicize Xiao Ming's ascension to the people of various states. At the same time, the matter about the Chang'an rebellion was thoroughly exposed in the newspapers. The prince killed the king of Zhao occupied the magpie's nest, the queen of Zhao and the 13th prince were forced to ascend the throne by the king of Zhao. In addition to exposing King Zhao's treasonous act, the newspaper also published a will of the edict, proving that Xiao Ming's ascension to the throne was in compliance with the emperor's order. When Xiao Ming is about to ascend the throne, the people of Fengou are naturally happy, because this means that the virtuous king in their eyes will become the emperor of the world, and their days will be under the protection of this emperor. Therefore, on the day of the enthronement, a large number of people spontaneously poured into King's Hao City. They were all elated and excited, shouting long live the new emperor, and waiting for the enthronement ceremony with joy. The smiles on the faces of King's Hao merchants are no less than that of the common people. Under Xiao Ming's rule, their status has been greatly improved, and they believe that in the near future, King's Hao will be more suitable for businessmen to live in. Those who are in the same mood as the businessmen were lowly craftsmen before, but now their status is not only not low, but on the contrary, they are gradually on an equal footing with scholars. The only person who is unhappy is probably the Confucian scholars who have offended Xiao Ming. They are now trembling, put their tails away, and dare not speak out on such a day, otherwise they may be beaten to death by the angry people. After all, Xiao Ming is the real son of heaven in the hearts of the common people, and he is the reincarnation of the Barefoot Great Immortal from the upper realm who was sent by God to save the common people. Barefoot Great Immortal. In the palace of King Qi, Xiao Ming laughed out loud when he learned that the people in the city were spreading rumors by word of mouth. He looked at Fiji, who was standing silently on the side, and said, Elder Fiji, you are the one who made this thing happen again 3 days ago? Fiji asked him a question, which was about deifying him. At that time, Xiao Ming was reviewing the news from the war in Yun's Hao City. Seeing that it was not a big deal, he didn't want to argue with Fiji about it. He sent him to discuss with Peng Yukin, which meant that if the two reached an agreement, they would do it. It's just that Peng Yukin clearly agreed in this situation. Peng Yukin said with a smile, Your Highness, this is the rule of all dynasties and dynasties. Now that His Highness ascends the throne, the historian will write a biography for His Highness, and this will also help His Highness to rule the Great Yu Kingdom. After all, the people of the Great Yu Kingdom still believe this. Xiao Ming was a little helpless when he heard the words, but after thinking about it, it seemed that it was really beneficial to him at this stage. In addition to making up the reincarnation of a barefooted immortal, Fiji also made up a story that a real dragon appeared in the sky when he was born. Yes, Your Highness, the old minister is also loyal and brave. Fiji smiled, and he was still first class in terms of flattery. Xiao Ming shook his head and said, It's getting late. Let's start the enthronement ceremony quickly. The war in Yun's Hao is tense, and this king is afraid that there will be accidents. Yes, Your Highness. Peng Yukin and Fiji said at the same time. After that, the two of them bowed at the same time and said loudly, Please enter the palace for a ceremony. Xiao Ming nodded, and took Fei Yue in full costume in one hand and boarded the Luan Drive, under the protection of the guards, went to the King's Hao government office, which is now temporarily serving as the government hall. 639 Ascension to the throne. Get off. With Jin Dafu's slender shout, Luan drove from the palace to the palace. The streets of King's Hao City were already full of people, and when they saw Xiao Ming's Luan drive out, they all bowed their heads to show their respect. Although the Great Yu Kingdom was repeatedly humiliated by foreign enemies, the officials, down to the common people, never bowed to the king sitting in the chariot. Xiao Ming and Fei Yue looked outside through the gap in the curtains. Seeing so many people coming to congratulate him on his enthronement, a layer of warmth rose in his heart. Over the years, his improvement of the people's livelihood has won the love and support of the people. From modern times, he deeply understands the truth. As long as he can get the support of the people, the country can be stable. As long as he controls the public opinion, neither the wealthy nor the capital is scary. Fei Yue held Xiao Ming's hand tightly, She was also a little nervous at this time, and now she looked a little graceful and luxurious in her empress costume, perhaps because of the rich diet of the palace. Feyuir was a little fatter than before, and there was some baby fat on her face, which made her appear more rich and noble like a mother. Along the broad street, Luanjia arrived at the government office in a quarter of an hour. At this time, Pang Yukin and Fiji stepped forward from behind, and the officials who were waiting in front of the government office all stood behind them. As the chief assistant of the cabinet, Pang Yukin personally lifted the bead curtain of the Luan driver and said loudly, "His Royal Highness, please enter the hall." As soon as his voice fell, officials inside and outside the palace all bowed to greet him. Xiaoming and Feyuir got off the road together, and the two walked side by side along the Qingxi Avenue at the main entrance of the government office to the Hall of State Council. The two walked slowly and slowly. According to Fiji, when the bell of a king's house city struck 9, they happened to sit down on the dragon chair in the hall. Xiaoming has never heard of this kind of rule, and Fiji's explanation is that it corresponds to the honor of the 95 stepping into the Hall of Government Affairs. Xiaoming immediately smelled a strong incense smell. The Hall of Government Affairs was filled with cigarettes. 2 rows of red lacquer pillars were arranged on both sides, and a dragon chair was placed in the middle. At the same time, there is a tablet on the right side of the Hall of Government Affairs. The tablet is in shining gold, and it reads, "The Emperor of Hongd, great benevolence, filial piety, pure goodness." The emperor on this tablet was Xiao Wangxuan. According to Fiji's instructions, Xiaoming stepped forward and bowed to the tablet 3 times. At this time, Jin Dafu brought him a glass of wine. He raised the glass with both hands, and then sprinkled it in front of the tablet. Xiao Wangxuan died tragically in Chang'an, and Xiaoming naturally couldn't go to Chang'an to worship, so Fiji set up a tablet in the government hall, which is also the etiquette before the new king ascended the throne. After the salute, Xiaoming said goodbye to Xiao Wangxuan, and then Princess Taiping, Song Guoguang and other royal relatives and nobles cried at the same time, looking like they were crying and grabbing the ground. This was a farewell gift. After the prescribed farewell ceremony was over, Pang Yukin led the officials suddenly shouted loudly, "Long live my emperor, long live, long live. Long live the empress, long live, long live." Xiaoming and Feyuir stepped forward amid the congratulations of the ministers. Xiaoming sat down on the dragon chair, and Feyuir sat down beside him looking at the officials in the council hall. Xiaoming and Feyuir sat on it to accept the worship of the officials. When the voice of Long Live sounded in the government hall, the people outside the government office shouted "Long live" at the same time, and the whole King's House city was in a frenzy. From then on, their king of Qi will be the only emperor of the Great Yu Kingdom. Xiaoming smiled. He had only seen this kind of formal ceremony on TV. He never thought that one day he would sit in this position and accept the adoration of the minister. Feyuir also had an excited look. She tried to straighten her body to make herself more like a queen, accepting the adoration of all the ministers. Jin Dafu took out Xiao Wangxuan's edict and read out, "The last edict of the first emperor said, I have been enshrined in the ancestral temple for more than 15 years since I entered the Datun dynasty. It was my fault that the country fell, and it was my fault that the whole world fell apart, and I am truly ashamed of my ancestors, my 7 sons, Xiaoming, our benevolent, filial, and wise. They should follow the instructions of their ancestors, that is, the emperor's throne. Family relatives, county kings, and vassal screens are the most important things. Don't leave the country without authorization, and send envoys to honor the new emperor. Those who do not respect the edict and rebel are rebels, and the whole country should punish them." After the last edict was read, all the ministers said in unison, "I will wait for the order." Xiaoming nodded, and then he said, "When I first ascended to the great treasure, I will definitely do my best to cultivate morality within, ward off foreign enemies, seek well-being for the people of the world, and build a foundation for future generations." When the words were finished, Jin Dafu picked up the prepared imperial decree and said, "Consult Princess Fei of Qi, Xiang Zhonghua, Ziyu famous family, Wen Wei, steadfast in heart, soft and good manners." 6 lines are well prepared. Long Xiaoshud, in the palace the 4 religions Hongxuan, allowing the marriage of mother ceremonies to the world, once ordered by the Empress Dowager, to book a treasure book, and establish it as the queen. I admire this. The first stage of the enthronement ceremony has ended. At this time, Pang Yukin shouted, "Roller curtain, quit the class." In another burst of Long Live, "Congratulations." Baiguang withdrew from the Hall of State Council. Xiaoming and Feyuir got up and walked out at this time, and there were ceremonies to worship the ancestral temple and worship the sky below. The enthronement ceremony lasted from morning to night. Fulfilling all the tedious etiquette, Xiao Ming and Fei Yue returned to the palace in Luankar at dusk. However, at this time, the plaque of Prince Qi's mansion had been removed, and a gilded plaque of royal court was replaced on it according to a group of officials, now that Xiao Ming has ascended the throne. The title of King Qi is a thing of the past, but the palace has not yet been built, and he can only live here, so it should be changed into a royal residence. So that he can live here as a matter of course, because this residence is the temporary residence of the emperor's slave to see the emperor. The queen's concubine, the two returned, and a group of palace maids and eunuchs bowed and shouted together in two groups, "No gift." Xiao Ming and Fei Yue laughed. These palace maids and eunuchs all escaped from the Chang'an rebellion, and concubine Zhen chose the clean ones to stay and serve them. In the past, the slaves in the palace were arranged in the pantry, but now the pantry has been moved to the courtyard next to the palace, because the emperor's bedroom could not permanently live in a man other than the emperor. After accepting the adoration of the palace maids and eunuchs, Fei Yue said with a serious face, "From now on, you will all serve the emperor's side. This palace hopes that you will remember that in this palace, you have to do more facts, less chew some tongues. If anyone dares to eat inside and out, don't blame this palace for his methods." Yes, the empress. A group of palace maids and eunuchs said in unison at this time. Fei Yue's expression loosened, and she said to Xiao Huan, who was serving by her side, "Today, the emperor is very happy to be enthroned, and he will reward each of them 12 taels of silver." Xiao Huan has already prepared the broken silver, because this is also one of the procedures of the enthronement ceremony, and the purpose is to give favor to the servants. Chapter 640 Worry. Siming Hall. This used to be the side hall where concubine Zhen lived. Because Xiao Ming ascended the throne, the name here was changed to Siming Hall, because this Siming Hall was the residence of the Empress Dowager in the Great Yu Kingdom. After admonishing the maids and eunuchs in the palace, Xiao Ming and Fei Yue went to the Siming Hall, which was the last ceremony of the enthronement ceremony, to show the emperor's virtue of benevolence and filial piety. After the salute, Xiao Ming and Fei Yue both breathed a sigh of relief. They were both physically and mentally exhausted after the day's tossing, and now they can finally rest. Concubine Zhen has always disliked these messy etiquettes. If she hadn't cut down a lot of etiquette at the enthronement ceremony, the two would have been busy for a few hours. It's the same with Pang Yuken and Fiji. The queen is pregnant, so it's not easy for the two of them. Concubine Zhen said, pulling Fei Yue to sit down. Fei Yue said, "Mother, don't worry, the emperor ascended the throne today. The ministers are very happy, and they all feel that it is better to be grand." Okay, you're the one who is the most amicable. Concubine Zhen smiled. Now that Xiao Ming has become emperor, she is also at ease. From now on, her son will be above 10,000 people, and no one can challenge her authority. The only thing she needs to worry about is whether Xiao Ming will always be a famous monarch. After a pause, she turned to Xiao Ming and said, "Your Majesty, the Queen Mother doesn't want to say much about the rest. With the current situation in the Great Yu Kingdom, the Queen Mother only hopes that you can be a person who can turn the tide as before. Don't worry, Queen Mother, I will not be greedy for pleasure and forget the original intention of ascending the throne." Xiao Ming said, and suddenly changed his name to Zhen. But Xiao Ming was a little uncomfortable. The two sat in the Siming Hall for a while and then came out of the hall. As the days passed, Fei Yue's belly was also getting bigger day by day, and it was more inconvenient to move than before, so Xiao Ming didn't want her to show her face everywhere. Now back in the main hall, Xiao Ming helped Fei Yue to sit down on the edge of the bed. At this time, Jin Dafu went to the front of the hall and asked, "Your Majesty, it's getting late, it's time to eat." Xiao Ming glanced at Jin Dafu, and at this moment Jin Dafu's eyes flashed with excitement. After he ascended the throne, concubine Zhen assigned Jin Dafu to Xiao Ming. According to concubine Zhen, the eunuch around him must be reliable. Now Xiao Ming can only trust Jin Dafu. After thinking about it, he did not refuse. Now concubine Zhen also lives in the palace. She can just ask Jin Dafu to talk to her when she has nothing to do, and concubine Zhen's mood has gradually stabilized. Now on weekdays, if you have nothing to do, you can eat fast food and recite Buddha, but you don't need someone to accompany you all the time. Xiao Ming nodded. At this time, the palace maid entered the main hall with the dishes, and the carefully cooked dishes were quickly placed on the table. These dishes were handed over to the dining room by Xiao Ming in order to supplement Fei Yue with nutrition. When the dishes were served, Jin Dafu and the palace maid's daughter stood guard outside the door, and the lights outside the bedroom were brightly lit. Although this was still a palace, it had some traces of life in the palace. But even so, for Xiao Ming, he just changed his self-proclaimed name, and changed the servants to palace maids and eunuchs. This country is still the same country, and he needs to beat him down a little bit. Your Majesty, our child is moving. Fei Yuer's face was filled with happiness as a mother. Xiao Ming's heart suddenly warmed when he heard the words. He said, so naughty, he must be a little prince in the future. Fei Yuer smiled softly. She stroked her stomach and said, I hope she is a girl, so that she will not be involved in the right and wrong in the future. Xiao Ming's expression was gloomy. He naturally understood what Fei Yuer meant. The Chang'an rebellion must have left her with lingering fears. She didn't want her children to fall into this cruel political struggle. Just being in the royal family has already destined her to be unable to escape some fate even if she is a princess. But Xiao Ming will never allow the battle of princes to repeat itself in the Great Yu Kingdom because he will be the last emperor in the history of the Great Yu Kingdom. There will be no father-to-son inheritance after him, and the imperial power will continue from generation to generation because he holds the technology spar. He must maintain his supreme imperial power, so that he can fully promote the development of technology. Otherwise he will only be pulled to slice. An emperor who has lost his rights is no different from a dog. In addition, he believes that he can use the knowledge of technology spar to lead the Great Yu Kingdom in the right direction. It is precisely for this reason that he feels that it is impossible for him to occupy the throne, because whether it is in the past or in the future, the Great Yu Kingdom will follow the policy of sages governing the country, so that the country will not go down the road of destruction due to personal interests. I will definitely protect him. Xiao Ming smiled gently, which made the happiness in Fei Yuer's eyes even more intense. Unable to restrain herself, she gently leaned on Xiao Ming's shoulder, facing the bright moon. She began to fantasize about the future. Xiao Ming also looked at the bright moon in the sky. The enthronement ceremony ended successfully, and today's success is due to the bloody fighting of the soldiers of Fenghuo to resist the coalition of the Three Kings. He is a little worried now. He doesn't know what the current situation in Yunzhao City is. While he was thinking about it, the soldiers of Yunzhao City had just ended a war. The city walls of Yunzhao City were full of coalition soldiers and corpses. The blood had dyed the city walls of Yunzhao City red, and the smell of blood was disgusting. While under the city more corpses of soldiers lay in various shapes. This was the 5th day of the Three Kings' allied forces' siege. Facing the city defended by artillery and muskets, the allied forces, which had lost 18,000 soldiers, were defeated again. Taking advantage of the night, Niu Ben and his group of generals directed the soldiers to reinforce the city wall and transport artillery shells and gunpowder. Although the Three Kings' allied forces attacked the city as usual today, they clearly felt the war weariness of the Allied soldiers. Although the overseer of the Allied forces was still carrying out cruel military orders, the soldiers didn't care when they attacked the city. And some soldiers even pretended to die under the city when they were cleaning the battlefield. These coalition soldiers would suddenly get up and surrender collectively. When they cleaned the battlefield tonight, they detained another 2,000 coalition soldiers who pretended to be the general. The number of soldiers in the coalition army has dropped significantly these days. According to these prisoners, there are more and more deserters in the army, and the commanders of Yan, Liang, and Zhao are also on guard against each other, and they are unwilling to send their own soldiers to strike the front. It seems that, as His Highness said, these three kings are in harmony, but there are many contradictions within, and they are also guarding against each other. Lu Fei said. Niu Ben nodded and said, it's just that it's not yet time for a counterattack. The news of Yang Zhao's capture of Bing Zhao hasn't come yet. As soon as the news arrives, it's time to go out of the city to fight. Lu Fei scratched his head. He had long wanted to go out of the city to annihilate the Three King coalition, but Niu Ben was obviously much more stable. Now that the general said this, he had to nod his head. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 641 Encirclement. Union Camp. Xiao Se looked at the faintly visible Yunzhao city with a gloomy expression. Since the coalition army arrived at the city of Yunzhao, they have been sieging the city for 5 consecutive days, but today is the 6th day. Like the previous 5 days, from morning to night, the coalition still could not break the city of Yunzhao. The city in front of them was Yunzhao. It was like an iron wall at the beginning. He thought that Xiao Ming's army was only relying on the advantage of firearms, but in the face of such powerful weapons and slow reloading, he thought that he could eliminate the disadvantage with a number of people. It was only after a few days of fierce battle that he gradually realized that things were not as simple as he thought. Compared with firearms, the soldiers in Yunzhou City made people even more fearful. That the soldiers were not afraid of death and were indomitable. After the soldiers of the coalition army climbed to the front of the city, they were faced with an icy bayonet that was more terrible than a musket. In the past few days, not only has he become a little restless, but Kuai and Zhao Ang are also in a state of unease. In their common sense, the coalition forces that gather the elite of the three kings will easily take Yunzhou City, but now the time is running out. The longer it dragged on, the morale in the camp dropped to the extreme, and soldiers kept running away. Just when he was irritable, he suddenly saw a fire in the west of the camp, and instantly, his heart was cold. After a while, Zhao Ang came in a hurry, and he said impatiently, "The grain we brought here from Kaizhou was robbed, and the cavalry in Yunzhou City burned the grain and grass." At this time, Kuai was also alerted and rushed over. He said angrily, "Your Zhao State's black armored cavalry is really a waste. The so-called first cavalry of the Great Yu State can't even protect food and grass." Zhao Ang looked embarrassed. The food and grass transported from Kaizhou had always been protected by their black armored cavalry, but it was 60 miles from Kaizhou to the coalition camp. How could their 40,000 cavalry protect such a long food route? During the few days of the siege, the cavalry of Yunzhou City often attacked the grain and grass by means of a small group of cavalry. These days his soldiers are also exhausted, and now he is also annoyed by Kui's reprimand. "This general's black armored iron cavalry is a waste, and your Yan army is even more waste. It has been 5 days since the siege, and you can capture an inch of the city wall of Yunzhou City. This time, it is just for profit, not sincere, not determined." Kui's eyes were red, like the eyes of a crazy beast. The battle was unfavorable, and the soldiers were severely damaged. The ceremony of enthronement had been completed today, but they could not step into Yunzhou City now. Even if he captures Yunzhou City and returns, he cannot explain to King Yan. While the two were arguing, suddenly a cavalryman came to the camp in the dark of night and shouted, "The king of Liang is urgent, the king of Liang is urgent." Zhao Se suddenly had a bad premonition when he heard the words, and he hurriedly ordered people to put the messengers in. As he rode his horse to the front of the tent, the ordering soldier gave an order and said urgently, "King Yuan sent a large army to attack Liangdi, and now it is approaching King Zhao. King Liang has an order, ordering His Highness to lead his troops to clear the siege immediately, without delay." King Yuan. The second prince's face was ashen, with a trace of panic in his eyes. He immediately said to the lieutenant, "Now the teacher will return to King Zhao immediately." Hearing this, Kuai stood in front of the second prince and said, "Zhao Se, are you going to break the covenant?" Zhao Se knew very well the current situation of Liangguo. If Yang army attacked with all their strength, Liang country would not be able to support it. Moreover, with Zhao Ming's support, Yang army was equipped with a large number of firearms. He pushed Kuai away and said, "If Liangguo died, what's the use of this covenant?" After that, he walked out of the tent and ordered Liangjun to turn back. There's no reason for this." Kuai was shocked and angry. The moment Liang's army left, it meant that the coalition army lost half of its strength. Now that the elites of the Yan army have been lost, it is impossible to fight this battle. Zhao Ang had already had the intention of retreating, and upon seeing this, he said, "General Kui, Liangjun has left, and this coalition has already existed in name only, so I am sorry that this general will not accompany him." When the words fell, he also went out of the big tent and assembled the cavalry to escape back to Chang'an. Kuai watched helplessly as the second prince and Zhao Ang left. His heart was icy cold. This time the coalition failed. Zhao Ming would definitely attack the state of Yan. To vent his anger slumped on the ground. Kuai was at a loss. Yunzhou City. Niu Ben also got news from Bingzhou City. After reading Chen Xinren's letter, Niu Ben said, "Everything is within His Highness's plan. Now that the city of Bingzhou has been destroyed, the second prince who has received the news will inevitably return to King Zhao. As a result, the alliance of the three kings will fall apart." The army marched forward, annihilated the incoming enemy in one fell swoop, and seized Kaizhou, Bianzhou and other royal cities occupied by King Yan. The generals in the camp are gearing up for each other, and now it's time for them to show off their skills, and Lu Fei is the most active. He said, "General, give an order at this time." Niu Ben looked around in a serious circle. He said, "After a long day of fighting, I would have known that you are all tired, but if you don't take advantage of tonight's encirclement of the three kings' allied forces, these troops will flee, and now Lu Fei is facing the front." The coalition army camp left. Luo Hong and Yi Qingyuan surrounded the coalition army camp from the left and right sides, Fireworks were the number one. Success or failure was determined by this yes, General. All the generals roared in unison. The generals left the camp and immediately gathered their soldiers and chariots out of the 3 city gates, taking advantage of the darkness to move towards the coalition camp. At this time, Qi Guanggai and Bai Mu also returned from outside the city. Seeing such a big movement, the two immediately understood what they were doing. They found Niu Ben for the first time. General, are you ready to fight back? Qi Guanggai asked. Niu Ben glanced at the terrain on the sand table. He said to Bai Mu, you immediately led 20,000 cavalry to the back of the coalition camp to block the retreat of the Yan army and Zhao army. Qi Guanggai, you immediately lead 20,000 cavalry to the. They left with Chen Xinren and set up an ambush on the official road leading to Zhejiang to annihilate the Liang army. Yes, General. The two of them immediately summoned the cavalry on the moonlit night. All the troops in Yunzhou city were mobilized, and Niu Ben personally went into battle this time. If this time successfully encircled and wiped out the allied forces of the 3 kings, the kingdom of Yan and the kingdom of Liang would soon be engulfed and included in the territory. After a little thought, Niu Ben went into battle himself. This night's attack was too important to have any mistakes. Riding out from the west gate, Niu Ben entered the central army where Lu Fei was at this time. All the soldiers of the central army remained silent, and no soldier made a noise. This time, what they wanted was a surprise. The 20-mile road was not long, and within an hour, the coalition camp appeared in front of everyone. The cavalry hunters in the army passed the news back and forth. After getting the white wood around and all the troops on the left and right in place, Niu Ben took out his sword and shouted, "Kill!" Chapter 642 Soldiers Attack. Kill! The soldiers of the Chinese army shouted in unison, and the sound of roar echoed through the night. Luo Xin completed the deployment of the field artillery in the distance. At this time, with this order, the artillery roared and the shells flew towards the coalition camp. At this time, the coalition camp was full of lit torches, and Liang Jun was heading towards Jiangju. Even from a distance, the movement in the camp could be clearly seen. In addition, the retreat of the coalition forces caused chaos, and the outpost of the camp did not find the army of Yunzhou city that was approaching. The sound of the artillery sounded, and the soldiers in the camp were even more panicked. Xiao Sei ordered the Liang army to speed up the withdrawal from the camp. At this time, Kui Wai was also stunned by the artillery and the roar, and he immediately shouted, "Enemy attack! Enemy attack! General, the Liang army has withdrawn, and Zhao Yang's cavalry is also ready to withdraw. Only our Yan army cannot defeat the Qi army. General, it is too late to withdraw now." Hey! Kui Wai knew that the situation was over. He sighed in despair. God is going to destroy our country of Yan. Withdraw! A group of generals immediately shouted and assembled soldiers to retreat to Kaizhou city. Boom boom boom, the brightly lit coalition camp could be seen in the eyes of the artillerymen. Luo Xin prepared all the shells and gunpowder. This time not only were the field guns whistling, but the mortars also threw lime bullets and explosive bullets into the coalition camp, which immediately turned into a sea of fire. At the same time, the Chinese army where Niu Ben was constantly approached the main camp, and the left and right armies also began to line up on both sides, squeezing the space of the 3 kings' allied forces. The battle started with the right army first. The retreating Liang army encountered the right army, who was standing still. The right army in a column did not use the traditional 3-stage shooting, but used the more aggressive hedgehog formation. The soldiers in the first row are responsible for shooting, while the soldiers in the second row, the third row, the fourth row, and the fifth row are responsible for loading. When the soldiers in the first row shoot, the soldiers in the second row hand over their flintlocks to the soldiers in the first row. At the same time, the soldiers in the second row handed over the loaded firearm to the third row, and then took a loaded flintlock gun in the face of the retreating Liang soldiers. The continuous firepower caused a large number of casualties to the Liang army. In an instant after touching a blood, Liang Jun's soldiers retreated in the northwest direction under the leadership of the general. In this gap, the Yunzhou army had not yet completed the containment. Yu Qingyan calmly judged the situation on the battlefield. Now Liang Jun, who is eager to retreat, has no intention of fighting. They just want to break out of the encirclement as soon as possible. In their plan, they did not plan to destroy this place with Liang's army. Their strength was limited, and fighting with more than 300,000 coalition forces at the same time would cause great casualties. Therefore, from the very beginning, they planned to release the Liang army and concentrate their forces to annihilate the Yan army and the Zhao army. Now they are attacking the Liang army, only to weaken the strength of the Liang army. After the Liang army soldiers withdrew from the shooting range, Yi Qingyan led the soldiers to drive out the collapsed Liang army from the encirclement like ducks. At the same time, the chariot carrying the soldiers went in the direction of Beimu, completely completing the blockade of the coalition camp. Then he led the rest of the soldiers to move closer to the main camp. At this time, the fireworks in the air were already blooming, which was the signal of the attack in the camp. Zhao Ang hurriedly assembled his cavalry, but because the camp was too chaotic, many soldiers could not find generals and would not find soldiers. The gunshots got closer and closer, and Zhao Ang became more and more anxious. If it continued like this, none of them would be able to leave. He led the 20,000 people who had already assembled and began to retreat towards Caishao. Bang bang bang. After completing the encirclement, the left army, the right army, and the central army simultaneously approached the coalition camp, and the soldiers stopped and opened fire as they moved along the way. In the screams, the soldiers of the Yan army kept falling. At this time, Kuiwai had turned from despair to hysteria. The Yan army had lost more than 60,000 people after sieging the city for several days. Now the Yan army only had more than 100,000 people. The Yan army also lost its numerical advantage. It was just that the beasts were still fighting. In the face of the desperate predicament, Kui Hui became courageous. He led the elite Black Feather Guards in the Yan army and did not retreat in the direction of Caishao, but directly covered them from the left. Caishao city used to be a royal city for him. Although it was captured by the Yan kingdom, the nobles in the city still did not surrender. The direction on the left is the shortcut to Yan kingdom. As long as he breaks through here, he can escape back. Kill. Those who stand out of the siege will be rewarded 10,000 taels. Kui Wai shouted with red eyes. In Yan kingdom, he was a general trusted by King Yan, and he was also the younger brother of King Yan. The Black Feather Guard is the most elite footstep of the Yan kingdom. It is marked by the black feather on the helmet. This is a direct line of troops of the King Yan family. Most of the generals are from the clan and are very loyal. The 40,000 Black Feather Guards, led by Kui Wai and other generals, rushed towards Luo Hong's left wing like an evil beast. In the dark and the bright moonlight, I saw a large group of soldiers rushing towards them. The soldiers of the left army clenched the flintlock guns in their hands. They have firm will and cold eyes. In the face of such a large-scale charge, everyone from the soldiers to the generals understands that even if they put on a fire hedgehog, they will shoot at most 12 bullets. So, before these soldiers were in range, they had bayonets, because eventually they would be in hand-to-hand combat. Looking at the soldiers of the Yan kingdom who were rushing over, Luo Hong took a deep breath. He had to admit that the soldiers he led were the most elite soldiers of the great Yu kingdom. They had incomparable loyalty to Xiaoming and a passion for the rejuvenation of the country and the nation in their hearts. More powerful than the weapons in their hands is their indomitable spirit and courage to fight fire. Luo Hong completely abandoned his fear of death at this time, and turned his emotions into an order. Bang bang bang. The flames lit up the night sky. Along with the flames, and the bullets ejected from the flintlock gun flew fiercely towards the Black Feather army of the Yan kingdom, which rushed over like a beast. Amidst the screams, the Black Feather army soldiers fell one after another, but the Black Feather army behind them continued to charge forward over the soldiers' corpses. Archer ready, Kui Wai was hiding behind the Black Feather army's formation, and now was the only chance for him to leave here alive. As long as he could escape from the camp, it wouldn't matter even if all the soldiers of the Black Feather army died. Under the urging of the general, the Black Feather army continued to charge forward with the fire of the musket. The first one to break out of the siege will be rewarded with 50,000 taels of silver, and will be sealed as Marquis of Wanhu. Kui Wai shouted out a crazier reward, worried that the soldiers would be scattered under the reward. There must be a brave man, and at this time, the soldiers of the Black Feather army shouted and rushed forward. Chapter 643. Fire arrows. In the sound of the command, the Black Feather army suddenly threw a shower of arrows when it rushed to Luo Hong's left army. 50 meters away, the black arrows in the moonlight fell in an arc, and many soldiers of the left army groaned and fell injured. Bang bang bang. The shooting continued, the wounded soldiers were dragged to the back, and the vacated positions were quickly filled by other soldiers. The left army led by Luo Hong had a total of 30,000 people. After the large column shot, the Black Feather army suffered heavy casualties, but the remaining Black Feather army rushed forward. At this time Luo Hong shouted, "Bayano, kill!" Facing the Black Feather army rushing over, the soldiers of the left army formed a tight phalanx and flashed their bayonets. At this moment, the black torrent and the dark green bayonet wall collided, and the two sides immediately fell into hand-to-hand battle. Holding the saber in his hand, Luo Hong rushed to the left and right of the Black Feather Army. The soldiers beside him skillfully used bayonet fighting techniques with the Black Feather Army holding a sword, shield and spear at this time. Luo Hong finally understood why the King Zhao army had to train this single-action bayonet fighting technique every day, and he gradually understood that the advantage of firearms was to defend the city in a large-scale field battle. The advantage of firearms is likely to be lost due to the number of soldiers, weather, command and other issues. At this time, hand-to-hand combat is the only way to save the battlefield. He also wanted to understand why the King Zhao army had to rely on the chariot formation to fight against the barbarian cavalry in the Battle of Jizhao. Go to hell. A Black Feather Army general carried a longsword and attacked Luo Hong. Facing the tight bayonet formation of the left army, the Black Feather Army, which had been scattered by muskets, had no chapters, and could only rely on instinct to fight against the left army. At this time, the two armies' discipline and organization to judge. Luo Hong picked up the long sword that the general of the Black Feather Army had slashed under the crossbar of the saber, lifted his foot and kicked, and the general of the Black Feather Army fell down immediately. At this time, the soldiers on Luo Hong's side immediately raised their bayonets and stabbed the Heiyu army general. With a scream, the Heiyu army general was stabbed by 3 bayonets. Although it was shot by the musket, there are still more than 20,000 people in the Black Feather Army, and the fighting spirit has not completely disintegrated. Even so, the Black Feather Army did not gain the upper hands in the hand-to-hand combat of the left army, but instead retreated steadily. Kui Wai shouted in the army, no matter how high the bounty. He shouted at this time, it could not change the battle situation. He understood that he lost, and also understood why King Wei lost so thoroughly. Now there is only a deep sense of powerlessness and despair in his heart. The two sides were fighting fiercely, and at this time, there was a sudden sound of gunshots coming from the rear of the Black Feather Army. The soldiers of the Black Feather Army at the back were shot and fell down, and a key army circled behind them. At some point it turned out that Lu Fei had already cleaned up the frontal troops of the Yan Kingdom. Seeing that the Zhuo army was in a melee, he immediately led a group to come to support. And the rest of the soldiers were led by Niu Ben and continued to move forward. Encountered by internal and external attacks, the soldiers of the Black Feather Army in front retreated, and the soldiers who were shot at the back pushed forward, causing the Black Feather Army to be in chaos for a while. In the chaotic order, the Black Feather Army became less and less the opponent of the Zhuo army, and the casualties increased rapidly. This was the Heiyu army finally collapsed. Facing a completely hopeless battle situation, they dropped their weapons one after another, knelt on the ground, raised their hands. Raise your hands. Luo Hong was like a killing god. He had a strong smell of blood on his body. His body had been dyed red by the blood of the enemy. He held his saber tightly. He ordered, immediately find the general of the Black Feather Army. After a while, Kui Huai's 150 generals, big and small, were escorted to the front of the battle under the identification of the soldiers of the Black Feather Army. Lu Fei and Luo Hong quickly identified the positions of these generals. Commander Yan Jun. It seems that he has caught a big fish. Luo Hong laughed. Kui Wai is also a tough person, he said. If you want to kill, kill. Why should you humiliate me? Lu Fei and Luo Hong looked at each other. The war is not over yet. These Yan state captives are a dangerous factor. However, Kui Wai's status in the Yan kingdom is extremely high, and he is only under King Yan. Perhaps he is still a valuable bargaining chip. After weighing it, Lu Fei said sternly, detain all these generals separately, and never let them be with the soldiers. Luo Hong nodded. He also meant it. Kui Wai was stunned for a moment, but he couldn't help him to say anything. The soldiers, like tigers and wolves, immediately escorted them to the prison in Yunzhao City. Losing their generals, the remaining Yan soldiers are like a mess of sand, and they can only honestly accept the reality of being captives. Controlling the Yanzhao soldiers in the camp, Lu Fei and Luo Hong did not idle, but led the army to move forward. There were also some Yan state soldiers who fled to Caishao, and the most important one was King Zhao's 40,000 Xuanjia army. Now the feudal country still lacks horses, which leads them to remain on the defensive in the face of the barbarians, and can only use the advantage of defending the city with firearms to prevent the barbarians from going south. And really want to destroy the barbarians have to rely on cavalry. It is for this reason that Lu Fei and other generals are jealous when they see the cavalry, and now they have trapped 40,000 black armored cavalry. Select a batch of high-quality war horses and send them to Yan'an Shepherd. In a few years, there will be a large number of high-quality war horses. When the two of them walked towards each other, Zhao Eng had already fought with a chariot formation. After the chariot formation arrived, Beimu's cavalry was scattered among 10 chariot formations. Soldiers with firearms in the chariots kept shooting the Xuanjia army, and Shiroki also sent cavalry from the chariots to attack them from time to time. Facing this fortress-like formation, Zhao Ang had nothing to do, and the cavalry lost their mobility. At this moment they lost 10,000 people in just 3 hours, and behind them, the Yunzhao army who had dealt with the Yan state soldiers kept approaching. At this time, the eastern sky has already lit up with fish belly white. And the night of fierce battle with black armored iron cavalry is also exhausted. Seeing this, Zhao Ang became more and more anxious. He commanded the cavalry to attack the car formation blocking the road again, but was quickly repelled by the cooperation of muskets and cavalry. The sun gradually rose, and Zhao Ang could clearly see the army of Yunzhao city slowly approaching him. The dense musket team walked towards them in neat steps, like Yama about to be harvested. There are wolves in front and tigers in the back. Zhao Ang raised the knife in his hand. If he can't bring the black armor back, he will be dead in front of King Zhao, and now he has no choice. Kill! Zhao Ang shouted hoarsely, and he led the cavalry to charge the chariots again. This would be his last charge. Tens of thousands of horses galloped, and the remaining 20,000 cavalry rushed frantically towards the formation. There were gunshots again in the chariot formation. Beimu narrowed his eyes. At this time, he raised his hand. When Zhao Ang rushed to the chariot formation and was once again frustrated by the chariot, he ordered all the cavalry to attack. At this time, the generals including Niu Ben and others also arrived with a musket team. The fighting continued from morning to noon. During the melee, Beimu Yiki took the lead and rushed directly to Zhao Ang, who was slashing and killing the soldiers of the Fenguo. The two were extremely jealous when they met, and Zhao Ang also rushed towards Beimu with his saber. The warhorse galloped, and Zhao Ang's head flew high at the moment of passing by. Beimu laughed loudly and pulled back his sword to provoke Zhao Ang's head. At this moment, the black armored cavalry, known as the First Cavalry of the Great Yu Kingdom, was defeated. Chapter 644 Yunzhao Victory. The noon sun shines on the huge battlefield in front of Yunzhao city. The strong smell of blood wafted along with the north wind, and it was clearly audible. At this time, the originally yellow land had been dyed bright red with blood, and the bodies of the soldiers of Yan and Liang were scattered on the endless land. In the sky, crows are circling, and the low chirping seems to be singing an elegy for the war. Some of the remaining black armored cavalry still refused to surrender. They charged the chariots again and again, and at the same time, some cavalry came towards the big column of Niu Ben hollow phalanx. Under the high order, the original column quickly transformed into one hollow square after another. When the Xuanjia army rushed over, Niu Ben shouted loudly, "Fire!" Bang bang bang. Several hollow phalanxes blew out a burst of white smoke at the same time, and the Xuanjia army rushing over suddenly turned around. Zhao Ang died in battle, and there were not many Xuanjia troops left to fight stubbornly, and the outcome of the war was already doomed. When the sun went down, the rest of the Xuanjia army was wiped out. When we won, suddenly a soldier shouted loudly, followed by a huge cheer on the battlefield. Facing the mighty Three Kings allied forces, they fought a beautiful annihilation battle, and the 350,000 Three Kings allied forces vanished in a blink of an eye in the 8-day fierce battle. Fenguo did not lose an inch of land, and their relatives behind them also avoided being slaughtered by the Three Kings allied forces. The cheers of the soldiers resounding through the sky made Niu Ben and other generals smile. Liu Fei was sweating, and he said to Niu Ben, "General, we have defeated the Three Kings coalition. Now King Yan, King Liang and King Zhao should come and beg us in tears." Ha ha ha. Niu Ben was in a happy mood. He had been nervous all the time during this battle. After all, 350,000 coalition troops were not a small number. However, with the cooperation of Yongjun, they successfully prevented the invasion of Fenguo by the Three Kings allied forces. At the same time, just like what he had promised Xiaoming, they successfully wiped out the living forces of the Three Kings allied forces in this battle. In addition to the soldiers who surrendered on the battlefield today, the rest are soldiers of the Three Kingdoms who died in battle. Although the second Prince Xiaosei led the Liang army to turn back, however, Qi Guanggai and Yongjun were already ambushing halfway, and he believed that news of Liangjun's annihilation would come soon. Luo Hong, Bai Mu, Luo Xin, Yi Qinggai and other generals also rushed over at this time, with excitement in their eyes. And they exchanged the joy of victory with each other. They also understand in their hearts that this battle will determine the key battle of the situation in the north, and that they will win this time, and the decision-making power of the north will be transferred to the hands of the Fenguo. Hey hey, isn't this country of Yan very rampant? Now we have to see how rampant he is. Luo Xin laughed and laughed. Yi Qinggai agreed, "That's right, the messenger sent by the Three Kings dared to show off the power to His Highness. It's like an old woman eating arsenic and tired of living. What Highness, Now the emperor. Baimu reminded Yi Qingyan was startled, raised his hand to his mouth twice. Crow's mouth. Baimu is right, it's the emperor. It's the emperor. The others laughed when they saw it at this time. Luo Hong wiped the blood on the sword, and said in a condensed voice, I really hope to return to Chang'an one day sooner. The sentence silenced the generals, and only then did they realize that the war had just begun. Although they were no longer attached to Chang'an, after all, Chang'an was once the imperial city of the Great Yu Kingdom. If they don't take the imperial city for one day, they will have regrets for one day. Niu Ben glanced in the direction of Chang'an City, and said, this time, all the elites of the allied forces of the Three Kings have been lost, and the offensive and defensive situation in the north will change. These rebellions will not live long. The generals nodded when they heard the words. After a pause, Niu Ben said, although the war is over, these prisoners still need to be dealt with. Now you lead your troops to clean up the battlefield immediately, so as not to cause a plague. When Lu Fei and the others heard the words, their expressions suddenly tightened. This plague is something that changes people's color, and every time it appears in the midst of war, they dare not ignore it, and one by one they immediately organized soldiers to collect and burn the corpses. At the same time, they also collected weapons and armors on the battlefield. These things can be sent to the King's Iron and Steel workshop to make steel and make more firearms for them. After giving the order to clean up the battlefield, Niu Ben immediately sent someone to spread the results of the battle to King Zhao. This would be the biggest gift for Xiaoming, who had already ascended the throne, and his mission is not over yet. He will take advantage of this victory to attack Heizhou and Bianzhou, two cities that belonged to the royal family. After the two cities, they will gradually recover other states and counties. 3 days later, Niu Ben's battle report arrived in Qingzhou. On this day, Xiaoming discussed with all the ministers in the Hall of State Affairs as usual to confer the confederacy of the country and the government. The ministers who heard the news all showed shocked expressions. Xiaoming was stunned for a moment, and was immediately overjoyed. He immediately asked the post-general to present a battle report. His Royal Highness, Pang Yuqin, and Fiji stood at the front, and behind them were officials from the 6th Department, the Chamber of Commerce and other institutions. After they were shocked, they gradually showed ecstatic expressions. Although they are not on the front line, they are also nervous about the battle in Yunzhou, because this battle will determine the rise and fall of Fengguo. When he got the battle report, Xiaoming immediately read it. Niu Ben described the situation of the battle in detail in the battle report. In the decisive battle, the allied forces of the Three Kings were completely defeated. Ladies and gentlemen, the Three King Alliance army was completely defeated in this battle, and the losses were heavy. General Niu has won a big victory. This shows that the Three King Alliance army is just a paper tiger, vulnerable. Xiaoming said loudly. His heart was full of ambitions, first to destroy the Wei King, and then to defeat the Three King coalition. The advantages of firearms combined with strict training and discipline allowed the feudal army to easily defeat the traditional feudal army. This victory made him confident. King Yan, King Liang and King Zhao were no longer the enemies that he feared, and now he could finally turn his eyes to the north. This civil strife in the Great Yu Kingdom should also end. Mutual killings among the same clans are meaningless. The real enemies of the Great Yu Kingdom are foreigners. The hearts of those who are not of our race must be different, whether it is the barbarians, the Japanese state, or the Western powers. Ambition to destroy the Chinese nation has never disappeared. Whether it is the past, the present, or the future, he is better able to see the historical changes of these hundreds of years from modern times. Now that he is here, he will seek to leave a legacy for his country and nation in this jungle of the world. At the same time that the news of the battle reached King Zhao, the news of the destruction of the Three Kings' allied forces also spread to Bazhou and Chang'an. When King Yan heard the news from the defeated soldiers, he slumped on the throne. His face was white and his eyes seemed to have lost his vigor. 645 Shocking the world. Father, how should I do it? In the main hall of Prince Yan's mansion, Kui Hao wiped the cold sweat on his forehead. His body trembled a little. He had just returned to Bazhou from King Zhao a few days ago for this battle. The Yan Kingdom sent all the elites, even the most elite Black Feather army of the Kui family, but now all the 170,000 soldiers are gone. King Yan didn't seem to hear Kui Hao's words. He looked at the roof of the main hall like a clay sculpture. At this moment, a group of officials suddenly ran into the main hall in a panic, and an official exclaimed, "Your Highness, it's the other way around. The fourth prince is reversed. The palace will kill you." What? Kui Hao almost jumped up in shock. King Yan seemed to be waking up from a dream at this time, and he was startled and angry. This white-eyed wolf, this king has raised him in vain for the past few years, and I knew that they would kill him when they fled to Bazhou. Then he asked, "How many of them are there in all?" An official said in a hurry, "His Royal Highness, the Tian family and the Ji family have been planning for a long time. This time they lead the noble clan that depends on them. There are more than 50,000 members. Your Highness, if you don't leave, you will not be able to leave 50,000 people. Father, there are only 25,000 black feather troops left in the city, so they may not be their opponents." Kui Hao said. King Yan narrowed his eyes, and he suddenly laughed frantically. This king mistakenly saw Xiao Ming's child. The Tian family and Ji family must not have the courage. It must have been Xiao Ming who promised them. I didn't expect this king to fight all day long. Snake, but now bitten by a snake at this time. The battle between the Black Feather Army and the noble clan could already be heard outside the palace, and the officials and generals said anxiously, "Your Highness should make a decision earlier." King Yan sighed bitterly when he heard the words, and he said to Kui Hao, "Go to Yingzhou immediately. Your elder brother is leading 70,000 soldiers to guard against the king of Huainan in Yingzhou. Now it is only safe there." "Yes, father," Kui Hao said. Changqing Hall sitting on the dragon chair, King Zhao looked down on his ministers like an emperor. When the memorial of Yunzhou City's defeat in the battle was brought up, his heart couldn't help beating a few times. The officials and generals in the hall were watching King Zhao. The news of the defeat of Yunzhou City had spread in Chang'an City along with the merchants, and now they were all waiting for King Zhao to decide. Queen Zhao sits behind the beaded curtain with the 13th prince, who is almost 2 years old. King Zhao is just King Zhao. When she went to court, Queen Zhao still took the 13th prince to govern, but in fact she was just pretending to appease the old minister of Chang'an City. When she heard the news of Yunzhou City, a smile appeared on the corner of Queen Zhao's mouth behind the bead curtain. King Yan and King Liang are really rubbish. Even the 350,000 strong army can't capture a single Yunzhou City. Father, don't worry, even if the coalition forces are defeated, Xiao Ming's army must be very tired. Take advantage of the present time to take the land of Shu as soon as possible, must not be distracted by this matter. Zhao Yuanliang said loudly. King Zhao didn't seem to hear what Zhao Yuanliang said. He read, 40,000 black armored cavalry. This is this king's black armored iron cavalry. 40,000 people are gone. Seeing King Zhao's appearance, the courtiers in the hall had different expressions. When King Zhao entered Chang'an, many ministers joined King Zhao, but some ministers had to enter and leave the court to serve King Zhao just to protect themselves. Now that the three kings' allied forces had suffered a major defeat, they suddenly realized that following King Zhao would not last long. If the battle of Kangzhou was accidental, the battle of Jizhou was accidental, and the battle of Weidi was accidental, then the battle of Yunzhou City was inevitable. Xiao Ming has proven time and time again that his army is invincible, and everyone is ignoring this. Now the failure of the Three Kings Alliance has completely awakened many people. Looking at his father, who was a little rude, Zhao Yuanliang suddenly said, "Let's go away. Long live my emperor, long live, long live." After shouting, the ministers turned and left, leaving the palace. After all the officials left, Zhao Yuanliang asked cautiously, "Father Xiao Ming, this king is going to kill you." At this moment, King Zhao suddenly drew out his saber and slashed wildly at the chopping board in front of him. The delicate chopping board was chopped down by King Zhao's sharp sword, and sawdust flying. The 13th prince was frightened, and at this time, he suddenly started to cry wow. Facing King Zhao's appearance like a madman, Queen Zhao immediately protected the 13th prince and walked to the inner hall. Zhao Yuanliang didn't dare to breathe, but he knew very well his father's temperament. At this time, whoever touched someone would suffer. Suzaku Avenue. The ministers who had left the court walked together in twos and threes and whispered to each other. This time the coalition forces were defeated. What advice does Jez Huangshu have? There were three officials dressed in purple on the edge of Suzaku Avenue walking side by side. Judging from the official uniforms, all three are first-rank officials of the court. The person who asked was gray-haired and thin-looking, and it was Yu Zhiong, the minister of households of the current dynasty. Jie Yiren squinted and glanced at Yu Zhiong. After Fiji escaped from Chang'an, he was promoted to Zhongshiling. This is not because of his deep trust in King Zhao, but because he is the oldest among the many officials in Chang'an City, and he is also the top 3 in the year. However, although it is a Chinese book order, he has no real power in his hands. These 2 years are just a false name, and the real government affairs are handled by the people of the King of Zhao. Won't matter if you win or lose. What do you have to do with me? No matter who the Changqing Palace in Chang'an City is replaced, won't we still be our own officials? Jie Yiren said lightly. The Minister of Rights, Ni Kuang, who was walking on Jie Yiren's left, shook his head and said, Jez Hongshu's words are wrong. Now this King Qi is enthroned in King Zhao with the last emperor's edict. If this edict is true, then he is the only one. The new monarch of the Great Yu Kingdom, and this new monarch has a weird temperament and is different from ordinary people. Even if he defeats the king of Zhao one day, it is estimated that Chang'an will not be the capital. Yu Zhiong nodded. No, I met a businessman from King Zhao a few days ago. It is said that Chang'an officials who went to King Zhao are now all serving in King Qi's state. And Fiji is now a member of the cabinet? What is this? Jie Yiren asked in confusion. This cabinet was set up by King Qi. It is said that it is above the 6 ministries. There are 9 members in this cabinet to discuss national affairs together. Now there are only 2 members in this cabinet, and there are still 7 vacancies. Yu Zhiong added. Ni Kuang said at this time, too, from the perspective of the following, this king of Qi has a limitless future. It is impossible to say that he will be the emperor of the Great Yu Kingdom in the future. Now we should prepare earlier. Jie Yiren was also a little tempted when he heard the words. He didn't care, but who would have thought that it was time to drop his official robe? Having been in the officialdom for many years, they are well aware of the importance of being with people. Chapter 646. White clouds drifted lazily in the dark blue sky. Jie Yiren looked up at the sky above and asked, then according to the 2 of you, what should we do now? As the saying goes, people can't be hanged on a tree. Now that King Zhao is in the sky in Chang'an, we can only bow our heads temporarily, but there should be someone on the other side of King Zhao with a message for us, lest King Qi think that we are waiting with determination. King Zhao. Yu Zhiong pondered, after all, I have to rely on the support of my own family to have the status I have now, so as not to be dragged down by the family. Ni Kuang couldn't help but nod his head in agreement. Jie Yiren was a little surprised. It turned out that the 2 were trying to push him to contact Fiji secretly. After all, Fiji had always had a good relationship with him when they were in Chang'an. Jie Yiren is a little tempted, but he has been in the officialdom for many years, and he naturally knows that the disaster comes out of his mouth. No matter what, Chang'an is under the governance of the king of Zhao, he said lightly. The worries of the 2 of you are a bit unnecessary. No matter who has been sitting in the country for thousands of years, the wealthy family is still the wealthy family. It is too late for the royal family of all dynasties to win over, so how will they be angry with us? And the news from Weidi, weren't the wealthy families under the command of King Wei good? Yu Zhiong and Ni Kuang were stunned when they heard the words. They wanted to say something else, but Jie Yiren still left saying this. The 2 immediately looked at each other, and Ni Kuang said, what does this Jie Yiren mean? Whatever he means, in short he doesn't do it, we do it. Although his words make sense, but who doesn't want to have a place in the court in the future? Yu Zhiong said with his hands behind his back. Ni Kuang nodded, brother Yu is right, he doesn't participate, we secretly contact King Zhao, if King Qi's army comes to fight in the future, if we come to cooperate with each other, we will be heroes in the future, right, yes, there will be one less person to fight for credit with us. After the 2 of them finished speaking, they returned to normal state. Linen. The news of the collapse of the allied forces of the 3 kings also reached here at an extremely fast speed. Before the war, everyone in the Great Yu Kingdom turned their attention to Yunzhou City. Now that the victory has been decided, some people are happy and others are worried it was defeated, and it was so completely defeated. This king really thinks highly of King Yan and the others. The king of Chu looked in the direction of King Zhao, thoughtfully. This time Xiao Mingdang was basically a major event that shook the world, and now the 3 kings alliance was defeated when he ascended the throne, which must have made Xiao Ming's momentum unparalleled for a while. Uncle, it's not that King Yan, King Zhao, and King Liang are incompetent, but Xiao Ming's army is too powerful. Since the Battle of Kangzhou, Xiao Ming has been victorious, which is enough to explain something. The 3rd prince said lightly. The king of Chu fell into silence. When Xiao Ming ascended the throne, it was clear that he was hitting King Zhao and him in the face. After all, only King Zhao and him were the kings of the Great Yu Kingdom. However, although he was annoyed, there was nothing he could do. Now was not the time to tear his face off with Xiao Ming. And this time the 3 kings' allied forces were defeated. He even dared not have any unreasonable thoughts about the south of the Yangtze River. After thinking about it, he finally sighed, and now his only way is to continue to cooperate with the French to consolidate his military power in order to avoid being attacked by Xiao Ming. He could only find a way to temporarily paralyze Xiao Ming. Thinking of this, he looked at Xiao Zhen, the 3rd prince, and said in a strange tone, "Zhener, I'm sorry, uncle, for the sake of the Li family. My uncle's safety can only rely on you." The face of the 3rd prince turned pale in an instant. And then he suddenly laughed madly. Father is right, my brother is unreliable, and outsiders are even more unreliable. I really deserve it. There was no trace of guilt on the face of the king of Chu. He said, don't blame your uncle for being unkind. For the sake of Chu and the Li family, this is what your uncle has to do. After a pause, he shouted, someone. The third prince falsely preached the imperial decree, and the crime was extremely heinous. He immediately detained him and went to King Zhao to wait for the emperor's decision. Yes, your highness. The imperial guard in the palace stood behind the third prince, holding the third prince by one arm. Li Chuan was also in the main hall, and he asked, Father, do we want to call Xiaoming a minister? What about being a minister? It's just a false name. The important thing is that Xiaoming has no reason to use troops against our country after he is called a minister. In this way, we can hide our strengths and bide our time, develop secretly, and wait for the opportunity. Although Li Chuan was a little unwilling, he had to say that this was the best way at the moment. Now that Xiaoming defeated the three kings' allied forces for a while, everyone had to wait. The third prince heard the words, his eyes were malicious, and he said, you wait. One day Xiaoming will cut you all with 1,000 swords. You still worry about yourself. Li Chuan sneered, I don't know how Xiaoming will deal with a prince who ascends the throne without authorization. Ha ha ha. The king of Chu frowned. Chu Yuan, don't be rude. Xiao Zhen is a prince no matter what. Even if Xiaoming wants to kill him, it is a family affair of the royal family. This time, in order to show the sincerity of this king, you will be your own ambassador. King Zhao, you can live in King Zhao for a while in the future. Father. Li Chuan paled in shock. Why does my son live in King Zhao? The third prince looked like he was shot in Froda. He said, don't you understand? Of course, as a proton, Xiaoming will feel at ease. Li Chuan had actually thought of it, but he couldn't believe it. The king of Chu sighed deeply. He held Li Chuan's forehead and said, Darling, it's not that the father is cruel. If Xiaoming dominates the north, he will definitely attack Chu from the south. The three of King Yan are not Xiaoming's opponents. How can they fight against Xiaoming only with the strength of the Chu state? For today's plan can only be called ministers, quality. Li Chuan has 1,000 unwillingness in his heart, but what can he do now? The king of Chu has already decided. Can he violate it? Yes, father. Li Chuan's eyes were red, and he was very aggrieved. The king of Chu was also a little unbearable. After all, this is his own son. So he said, when you come back from King Zhao, the throne of the king of Chu is yours. No matter what the father does now, it will be given to you in the future. Yours. My son knows the painstaking efforts of the father and the king. First of all, going to King Zhao can reassure Xiaoming, and secondly, the news of King Zhao can be sent back at any time. This time, the son will live up to the father's expectations. Li Chuan gritted his teeth. The third prince sneered again and again, then burst into tears. Recalling the glory of the past, and looking at the current situation, he now deeply regrets ruining the future of the great Yu kingdom for the sake of the throne. It's just that no matter what he thinks, it's too late. He will be escorted to Xiaoming, and his younger brother, the king of Shu, will definitely be defeated by King Zhao because of the loss of the support of the state of Chu. After all, for the king of Chu, he needs King Zhao dealt with Xiaoming on the bright side. Chapter 647. The king of Huainan. Kui Zuier was a little stunned when she looked at the blooming begonia flowers in the palace 2 days ago. Her mother-in-law had returned from King Zhao, and at the same time she brought back the imperial decree to let her enter the palace as a concubine. Although the father and mother were very happy, she was not happy at all. It was not a blessing for her to go to a distant and unfamiliar place to marry a man she had never met. It's just the orders of her parents, the words of a matchmaker, not to mention that as the daughter of a vassal king, she has no choice at all. Zuier, what are you thinking? At this moment, a loud voice sounded, and an imposing, sturdy man in Chinese clothes came to her. When she saw the person who came, Kui Zuier's eyes turned into a crescent moon when she smiled, and she said, Father, why are you here? Father, the king came to see you. After all, my daughter is about to become the imperial concubine of the great Yu kingdom. The king of Huainan said loudly. Hearing these words, Kui Zuier pursed her lips and looked like she was about to cry. She said, my daughter is going to King Zhao. Not only is my father not distressed, but I am so happy. It seems that my father does not feel sorry for his daughter at all. King Huainan was stunned for a moment, then he suddenly burst into laughter and said, Zuier, it is precisely because you are about to become a royal concubine that your father and father are so happy, because in your father's heart, the only person in this world that can match you is now. Holy yes, yes, In the past 4 years, Sheng Xiang first defeated the barbarians in Kangzhou, and then defeated the barbarians in Jizhou again. My daughter's ears could hear alkali. Qizuir covered her ears when King Weinan saw his daughter. The smile on his face became more and more intense, and he said, however, this time, the sage has impressed the father and the king. Just a few days ago, the alliance of the three kings was defeated, and the position of the sage has been unshakable. King Liang and King Zhao, the northern part of the Great Yu Kingdom is convenient and stable. When Qizuir heard this, she just rolled her eyes. She wouldn't care about this, seeing the lack of interest in his daughter. King Weinan rolled his eyes and said to the topic, your mother and concubine who accompany you to the palace have been selected for you, and having them in the palace to take care of you will not make you feel wronged. If Qizuir nodded. At this moment, she was only worried because she didn't know who she was going to face. Seemingly seeing his daughter's worries, King Weinan comforted, now that the world is in chaos, the emperor attaches great importance to us. Even if the emperor looks at his father's face, he will treat you well. You can rest assured. Qizuir heard the reluctance in her father's words, and she smiled. Father, don't worry, it's a daughter's honor to be able to join the royal family, and her daughter just can't bear her father and mother. The king of Weinan felt sour in his heart. The marriage between the daughter of the vassal king and the royal family was a tradition of the Great Yu Kingdom, for the long-term stability of the Great Yu Kingdom. While the two were talking, suddenly a young man in armor came over and saw King Weinan. Qizuir was shocked when she heard the words, and she said nervously, Father, is there going to be another war? The king of Weinan looked solemn, and he said, the emperor has made a decree. One is to let you enter the capital in 2 days, and the other is to capture Yingzhou and destroy the troops of the king of Chu. At this time, Qi Shangan also looked at Qizuir and said, Sister, don't worry, King Yan is already at the end of the shot, and this capture of Yingzhou is also a credit given to us by Emperor Bai. Maybe I will go to Kingzhou as a general when the war is over. It's time to see my sister from time to time. Qizuir was relieved, and she said, if my brother is here, I won't be worried. Kingzhou. Just 5 days after the Battle of Yunzhou, another battle report arrived in Xiaoming's study. On the day of the Battle of Yunzhou, Xiao Se led the remaining Liang army to rush back to King Qin of Kingzhou, and was successfully ambushed by the coalition forces of Qi Guanggai and Chen Xinren. On the way, Xiao Se is dead. Looking at the contents of the battle report, Xiaoming was slightly surprised the second prince was hit by a musket. When Qi Guanggai found him, he was silent. This time the battle report was sent back by Niu Ben himself. After the war in Yunzhou was over, he no longer needed to stay in Yunzhou. The rest of the war was handed over to Lu Fei, and Luo Hong and others were enough. Xiaoming was silent for a while. The crown prince was dead, and the second prince was also dead now. The death rate of princes in the feudal dynasty was really high. However, Xiaoming was only slightly surprised to hear that the second prince had died, because this prince didn't have much interaction with him, and he always wanted to kill him. He was unfamiliar with this person, and he died when he died. Your Majesty, all the elites of Liang's army have been killed, and Liangguo is already an empty shell. We should take this opportunity to take down Liangguo, especially Zhuang Pass, so that King Liang will not go crazy and destroy the pass. Niu Ben said. Xiaoming nodded. You let Qi Guanggai continue to cooperate with Yuang's army to attack Liang. If you take Zhuangguan, you must take it into your own hands. Yes, Your Majesty. Niu Ben responded. He already knew about King Yong's surrender, but even so they couldn't fully trust King Yong. After all, King Yong was still one of the vassal kings in their national policy. They still have to cut down the vassal, but for the unification of the Great Yu Kingdom, they have to endure it. Temporarily picked up the battle report and continued to read it. There was also news of Kazhou and Bianzhou being conquered on the battle report. Kazhou? This is a treasure. The Kazhou of the Great Yu Kingdom is Puyan County in modern Henan. This Puyan County is located in the northeast of Henan Province, on the coast of the Yellow River, at the junction of Shandong and Anhui provinces. According to the information in the Science and Technology database, Puyan County is rich in product resources, and its oil and natural gas production accounts for 70% and 90% of the total output of Zhangjian oil field. In addition, Kazhou underground salt mine is rich in resources, with proven reserves of 140 billion tons. Thinking of this information, Xiaoming is most sensitive to oil, which is necessary for internal combustion engines in the future, and this place is very close to Kingzhou. But the only difficulty is that the mine is too deep and requires extremely high drilling technology. The allied army of the three kings was defeated. and seized this opportunity to take over the former imperial prefectures and counties as quickly as possible. Except for the accident of garrisoning troops in Caishao and Bianzhao, let Liu Fei and Yi Qingyan wait for the opportunity to continue to capture nearby prefectures and counties and control more land. To compress King Zhao's sphere of influence after a pause, he continued, I have given the king of Huainan in order to send troops to attack Yingzhou, and the affairs of the state of Yan can be handed over to him, king of Huainan? Niu Ben was a little surprised. Your Highness, is the king of Huainan reliable? I just want to test whether he can be trusted. If he captures Yingzhou and returns the imperial prefecture and county, the king of Huainan will be available. If he still doesn't go away, it means that he has ambitions, and I will treat him differently. Wait, PS, there are 2 updates in the past 2 days. It is estimated that I will be scolded again. Some people will ask why there are fewer full-time writing than part-time writing. Are you lazy? Snails are lazy, but they are too lazy to just why. Anyone who has read historical texts for a long time knows that the plot has developed to this point. Many books are basically on the road to the end, but for Snails, this book is just the beginning, because Snail wants to make this book live, not a pure YIY article. War is only auxiliary, development and social change are the keynote. Snail has read a lot of books these days, and I feel very touched. After all, Snail is also the old author. I hope to leave a wonderful world for everyone. I won't say more. I don't find a reason for the lack of updates in the past 2 days. It's the Snail's own reason. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 648 Nationalization of the Army. A faint scent of sandalwood permeates the study. Niu Ben thought for a moment and looked worried. What the Emperor said is very true. If King Huainan shot, it would save us a lot of strength, and at the same time, it can weaken the strength of King Huainan. After the destruction, only the Huainan king and the Yang king will be left north of the Yangtze River, but is the Emperor planning to let the vassal state continue? After all, the civil strife in Diyu is enough to see the harm that the vassal king is doing to the Diyu state. What General Niu can see, I can naturally see it, but King Yang and King Huainan are attached to me, but I can't easily use troops against them. Now the only plan is to appease them and wait for the stability of the Great Yu Kingdom. The strategy of cutting down the vassal, in this way, can save the people from the suffering of war, and can also solve the problem of the vassal king without bloodshed, and the barbarians have not yet eliminated the serious trouble. The king just quelled the rebellion as soon as possible. Xiao Ming said in a deep voice, it's not that he doesn't want to solve the vassal kings once and for all, it's just that he always has to pay attention to one strategy in everything. Since he can fight one by one, why bother to challenge all the vassal kings by himself? And an important question is that if the war continues, the Great Yu Kingdom will be completely smashed into a mess. The casualties in the Battle of Yunzhou City are all the young men of the Great Yu Kingdom. Among them, the number of deaths in the Battle of Yunzhou is not mentioned, but many people who transported food and grass to the allied forces of the Three Kings also died. It is easy to say that the Three Kings' allied forces were defeated, but in fact it caused serious war problems to the Great Yu Kingdom. One only needs to look at contemporary Middle East issues on this issue to understand what is happening to the people of the North during World War II. Soldiers had the pleasure of killing civilians indiscriminately. In this far uncivilized dynasty, killing people during the war was simply commonplace. The battle report of the Yunzhou War Nilbin is on the table, but the information collected by Wang Zhuan is under the table. According to the information provided by the Secret Guard, this time the Three Kings' allied forces were very insidious. Most of the civilians they recruited came from the occupied rural states and counties. At the same time, the grain and baggage for this battle were also forcibly added to the people of these states and counties during their capture of the city. The people of these prefectures and counties had already suffered their slaughter, and now it is even worse if the barbarians came to fight at this time. He really doubted that the people in these places would eventually help the barbarians, because these vassal kings did not necessarily treat them any better than the barbarians. Based on these, after thinking about it, he decided to win over the dependent vassal kings and stabilize the country as soon as possible. After all, the real enemy of the Great Yu Kingdom has been staring at him, and it is in his interests that the North is completely smashed. Although these dependent vassal kings are hidden dangers, at least they can keep one side stable. Moreover, after removing King Yan, King Zhao, and King Liang, King Yuang and King Weinan could not pose a threat to the central government at all. And it was enough to digest it slowly. Your Majesty is far-sighted. It seems that the last commander is overthinking. Niu Ben let out a sigh of relief. Xiaoming glanced at Niu Ben. In the past 2 days, Pang Yukin, Zhan Xingcheng and other officials have mentioned this issue, which is different from the attitude of Fiji and other old ministers of Chang'an. Xiaoming pondered a little about this and then understood that after he became emperor, the Chang'an official and Pang Yukin and other feudal officials became less able to urinate in a pot. One is that Chang'an officials still attach great importance to family status in their bones, and look down on officials from civilians such as Pang Yukin. Second, these officials tend to be conservative in thinking, and they are not open-minded than officials who have closed the country, and Pang Yukin and others are the vested interests of Xiaoming's elimination of the wealthy family. Psychologically, they have an instinctive vigilance against the wealthy family, and they are worried that the wealthy family will gain power and they will be liquidated. After all, there are innumerable connections between the nobles in King Zhao and other nobles in the Great Yu Kingdom, and they have great opinions on Pang Yukin and others. Secondly, Pang Yukin is trying to restore the legalism trend, and these officials from Chang'an still carry strong Confucianism, and the two are even more pointed to Meimang. From Xiaoming's point of view, he naturally favored Pang Yukin, but the land under the jurisdiction of the Fengguo continued to expand, and he had to rely on the old officials to govern the prefectures and counties for him. Faced with this conflicting problem, he also had some headaches, but at present there was no solution. After all, it had only been 5 years since he came to King Zhao. In the past 5 years, he has been able to achieve such achievements, which is unprecedented in Dao country, but even so, the number of officials he can train is limited. Even so, there are still some officials trained by Bowen College. I still respect Confucianism in my heart, and I have the same urgency as conservative officials such as Fiji. However, this question was raised by Niu Ben, and he was very unhappy, because he knew that the army could not think, otherwise it would be easy to cause trouble. No matter how much the officials make trouble, it is only a matter of lip service, and a modern army's rash movement is going to cause trouble. So he said sharply, "General Niu, you are too lenient on this matter. Soldiers only need to obey orders, and don't need to care about government affairs." Niu Ben's heart trembled when he heard the words, and he suddenly woke up. "Your Majesty, you will be guilty in the end. Next time, don't do it again. I know what you are worried about, but you think too much. Don't forget that slaughtering the wealthy was my idea back then, and some people can't turn the sky over." Xiaoming's words seemed to point to something. If there is an emperor, you will be at ease at the end. Niu Ben bowed and said that Xiaoming is now the emperor, and he gradually felt that Xiaoming was transforming into an emperor. "That's right, I will discuss the merits and rewards in a few days," Xiaoming said with a smile. He also expected these generals to continue to fight for him, and proper comfort was necessary. After bowing, Niu Ben turned around and left the study. When Xiaoming put down the brush in his hand and stood up looking at Niu Ben's figure as he crossed the stone bridge, Xiaoming sighed softly. When he became the emperor, he realized that being a foolish ruler is easy, and being a bright ruler is too difficult, because balancing a group of people under the hand is enough, and at the same time, you have to worry about the army. After all, in this era, generals do not listen to dispatch, and it is common to have troops with self-respect. Even in contemporary times, military coups often occur in some countries, and the fundamental reason is that the army has become the personal soldier of some generals, and this kind of situation is a very common thing in the feudal dynasty. Because of this, the emperor will have many restrictions on generals. Now Xiaoming has also encountered this problem. He absolutely cannot let himself want to kill a general. This general can easily lead the army to rebel. After thinking about it for a while, he felt that the solution to this problem was to nationalize the military. If so, he would have to pay close attention to the long history of the military. Chapter 649. P.S. There is another chapter at 11:30. If you go to bed early, book friends can go to bed early and read it tomorrow. Your Majesty, Tong Hongcheng and other nobles in Wei have been waiting outside the Zingyin for a long time. Are you letting them in now? Jin Dafu's voice suddenly sounded outside the door. Xiaoming came back to his senses, and only then did he remember the matter of meeting the Wei Dehao clan when Fiji came back from Jinling City. He brought these nobles to King Zhao, but he kept these nobles aside because of the enthronement ceremony. Now that he is free, Fiji immediately arranged for these nobles to meet him. After all, the more Xiaoming disappeared, the more uneasy these nobles were in their hearts. Zhuan and the others will wait in the main hall. Xiaoming frowned. According to the information provided by Wang Zhuan, These wealthy families are the actual managers of the states and counties, and they have to rely on them to collect taxes. Normally this time, the taxation of the 13 states can be collected so easily thanks to the cooperation of these wealthy families. In his opinion, he has to rely on these people to collect taxes for a long time. Yes, Your Majesty. After Jindafu left, Xiaoming stretched his waist. These days, his emperor was not very tired, but a little annoying. After all, there were more and more states and counties under his control, and there were all kinds of things. After approving a few more papers in the study, Xiaoming left for the main hall, so that these nobles and others were not aimless, but to show the imperial power. Long live my emperor! Seeing Xiaoming entering the main hall, the wealthy family headed by Tong Hongcheng immediately stood up and bowed to salute Xiaoming. At this time, the wealthy families of Wei Di were on both sides. Xiaoming passed through the middle, his eyes swept over them one by one, and sat on the main seat. He said, "Everyone, please sit down." At this time, Tong Hongcheng dared to look up at Xiaoming. According to what they knew, Xiaoming is only 23 years old now. Before they came, they always thought that Xiaoming was a vicious person, but now that they met, they realized that he was a handsome man. "How dare I sit in the same room with the emperor?" Tong Hongcheng was still standing, not daring to take a seat. At this moment, their palms were sweating nervously. The people in front of them are in control of the future rise and fall of their family. With a faint smile on the corner of Xiaoming's mouth, he said, "This person must be the Tong family, the only rich family in Jinling City." When Tong Hongcheng was named, he was both afraid and excited. He said, "Your Majesty, Kaoman is Tong Hongcheng, the head of the Tong family. It's just that the Tong family and Zhang family have always been at odds with each other. I hope the emperor will investigate." Elder Fij told me that everyone who came to King's Hao this time is a wealthy family who is willing to serve me, and this tax payment also depends on your help. This is what we should do. It is our honor to serve the emperor." A group of nobles said in unison. Xiaoming smiled when he heard the words, and he said, "I can rest assured in this way, but everyone can rest assured that as long as you are willing to serve me and obey the laws in your respective states and counties, you will be able to live comfortably. As for the rumors outside, my words about killing the wealthy family are all slander. So please don't be distracted." Tong Hongcheng sweated slightly on his forehead. There seemed to be nothing wrong with Xiaoming's words, he was just comforting them, but it was a needle hidden in the cotton. On the other hand, if they don't serve the royal family and don't obey the law, they will be killed. The calf trembled slightly, and Tong Hongcheng said, "We will keep the emperor's teachings in mind." Xiaoming also said what he should have said, so he asked, "I don't know what you think of you living in King's Hao during this time. The prosperity of business in King's Hao and the wealth of the people are rare in the world. There are many novelties that have opened our eyes. This trip to King's Hao is worth it." A noble family spoke up. "Your Majesty, we are all willing to dissolve the trilogy, but I don't know if we can do business. After all, the family is prosperous, and if there is no work, we will starve to death." A wealthy family took the opportunity to say Tong Hongcheng took this seriously. In order to save their lives, they disbanded the noble family and handed over the occupied land. In their opinion, only business can continue the prosperity of the family. This idea became stronger after they came to King's Hao, because they found that King's Hao merchants had a high status and would not be bullied by officials. Many wealthy businessmen have extremely luxurious mansions, and they have purchased a large number of slaves to serve themselves, and their lives are better than their wealthy families. How can they not be interested in this situation? The fundamental of Xiaoming's governance is to rejuvenate the country through commerce. Only the prosperity of private capital can make the people rich. After all, this is a truth that has been tested for hundreds of years. Therefore, Xiaoming not only does not oppose the business of the wealthy family, but even encourages the wealthy family to do business. Now it turns out that the people of Deu still lack interest in doing business, and there are very few farmers who can voluntarily give up their land to enter factories and do business. The poisoning of small farmers' thinking cannot be changed in 1 or 2 days. The most important thing is that they also have no funds. After all, not everyone has the courage to mortgage their land to banks for business. There have even been a lot of criticisms against Xiaoming's policy by the people, and some people have criticized the government for just taking advantage of this to annex land. This matter made Xiaoming a little surprised, but it was reasonable to think about it. He looked too high on the thinking of the people in this era, and some things had to happen naturally before they could lead to complete changes. For the policy, he formulated and publicized it, and the rest can only be left to the people themselves. Moreover, in Xiaoming's view, not everyone is a business material. If a large number of people fail to do business blindly, In the end, the culprit will have to be taken by the government. Therefore, relatively speaking, the wealthy are more proactive in doing business, because almost all of them have been involved in doing business, and their capital is strong. Even if they fail, they are just looking for other business opportunities at the same time. Xiao Ming gradually understood that when the feudal system collapsed and moved towards capitalism by reading the materials in the Science and Technology Library. The first to benefit was the aristocratic class, that is, the social change was basically carried out in a top-down situation. Now King Zhao is also in the same situation. In any case, the common people cannot compete with the traditional big merchants. The big merchants eat meat, and the common people can only drink some soup, and after the powerful like Princess Taiping turned into commercial trade, they have an advantage over the big businessmen. For Xiao Ming, the business pool in King Zhao is already muddy, and he doesn't mind the wealthy family coming in to share part of the profits, because more people can avoid one family's dominance. Otherwise, it won't be long before there will be super merchants in King Zhao, and this is not what he is happy to see. So he said, "Of course this is possible. I have always encouraged business," and Trey Tong Hong Cheng and others were immediately overjoyed when they heard the words. The prosperity of King Zhao's business has made them eager to move for the past few days. Now they can finally boldly do business with King Zhao's businessmen. Tuang Hong Cheng led a group of nobles, and at the same time bowed and said, "Thank you, Emperor Longjun." Chapter 650. The Fourth Prince. The light outside the main hall gradually dimmed. Tong Hong Cheng and others got Xiao Ming's promise, and it was inconvenient to stay longer. After all, being with the king is like a tiger. Maybe they will be unlucky if something is right, so they left after saying some innocuous words, and even if Xiao Ming allowed them to do business in King Zhao, they naturally had to find some way out. Seeing that all these wealthy families have left, Xiao Ming is also refreshed, and he has nothing to say with a group of strangers. He has also reminded that he should be reminded the most important thing to him now is the Great Unification War in the north. The defeat of the three kings' allied forces is just the beginning in his plan. King Yan was naturally the first one he needed to solve. Who made him the closest to him? Now that the fourth prince is in trouble with the Tian family and the Ji family, the king of Chu has lost half of the country, but he is also worried about the fourth prince. How can other people sleep peacefully on the side of the couch? Yan Guo must be firmly grasped by him. Thinking of this, he said to Jin Dafu, "Li Sam should have come back yesterday. You go to him now. I have something to tell him." Jin Dafu was holding Fujin, and now he looks like a professional eunuch, wearing black clothes and a high-top flat hat. He heard the words and laughed. "Your Majesty, Li Sam must be with Liu Li now." Looking for Li San, just find Liu Li. "Isn't this the maid next to the mother-in-law?" Xiao Ming asked. "No, the emperor doesn't know something. This Li San has long been interested in Miss Liu Li." Jin Dafu smiled. Xiao Ming nodded. "Li San is not too young. He has already reached the age of marriage." He pondered for a while and said, "Li San is the commander of the secret guard, and the secret guard is my eyes, so the loyalty of the secret guard is the top priority." The emperor said, "Very much." The emperor has been staying in King Zhao. This big country is so big, it is impossible to know everything. The internal and external matters are spread to the emperor's ears through the mouth of the officials. If they intend to deceive the emperor, it is also impossible to detect. Jin Dafu said, "It is for this reason that the secret guard I set up is to prevent this from happening." Xiao Ming said. Jin Dafu seemed to have a clear understanding. He said, "Your Majesty, it is better to marry Li San and Liu Li. In this way, Li San will thank the emperor in his heart and become more loyal to the emperor." "I think so too, but I'm afraid this is not enough." Xiao Ming said, "It would be appropriate if the mother-in-law recognizes Ryukyu as a righteous daughter. The emperor really prepared a generous gift for Li San this time." Jin Dafu said with emotion, "It's not just for Li San. Liu Li sacrificed her life to protect her mother-in-law when she was in Chang'an. The mother-in-law is also grateful to her. I once mentioned to me about accepting Liu Li as my righteous daughter, and this time I also pushed the boat. If that's the case, then it's perfect." Jin Dafu smiled and said, "This old slave will go and find Li San." After waiting in the main hall for a while, Li San, who was wearing a purple cotton gown, walked in. When he saw Xiao Ming, he bowed and said, "The commander of the secret guards, Li San, sees the emperor no gift." Xiao Ming helped Li San up, and he said, "When did you come back?" "Go back to the emperor, I just came back last night." Li San felt a little guilty, and Jin Dafu smiled strangely when he was looking for him. With his intuition as a secret guard over the past few years, he felt that something must happen. "Is Liu Li good looking?" "It's beautiful," Li San said instinctively. and then suddenly panicked. "Your Majesty, you should die if you commit crimes." Xiao Ming laughed, and he said, "What are you afraid of? I didn't say anything to you, not to mention this is King Zhao, not Chang'an." Li San felt uneasy in his heart. This meeting with the palace maid could be big or small. In the big case, it was an adulterous affair, and he was about to be dismissed and sent to prison. Seeing Li Sanai looking like he was scared to death, Xiao Ming simply said, "You are not too young, it's 20 or so this year. This time I will be a matchmaker and give you Liuli." Li San became more and more terrified. He knelt down in front of Xiao Ming with a thud, and cried, "Your Majesty, this is all a misdemeanor, and it has nothing to do with Liuli. If the Emperor wants to kill him, just kill Xiaoguan." Jin Dafu couldn't help laughing all the time, and then persuaded, "Li San, you are usually clever, how come you can't hear the truth or the lie this time? The Emperor heard about you and Liuli. This is distressing for you, and specially ordered the Mandarin duck. Why are you crying?" Li San stopped crying at this moment. He looked at Xiao Ming, and then at Jin Dafu. Both of them looked at him kindly. At this time he hesitated. "Is what the Emperor said true? I am the Emperor. Are you saying this casually?" "Of course, if you don't like it, I will give Liuli to others, and then many people will surely rob their heads." "Your Majesty, Xiaoguan likes it. Xiaoguan liked it when he first went to Chang'an." Li San said hurriedly. Xiao Ming nodded. "Since this is the case, I will fulfill you, but I still have something for you to do before you get married. Your Majesty, please make it clear." Li San's hippie smile returned to his true color. The fourth prince has a lot of ambition. I didn't want to destroy the Yan kingdom but fulfilled him. There is no need for another vassal king in the north. Li San understood that the information of the left and right secret guards was shared, and he said, "This uprising is the credit of the Yan family and the Ji family. The fourth prince is just a fox and a tiger, but it is a joke that he wants to take the opportunity to replace the king of Yan to manage the land of Yan. For Zhen, I just need to appease the Yan and Ji families. He is superfluous." Xiaoguan understands that before King Weinan captures Yingzhou, Xiaoguan will definitely get rid of the fourth prince. Li San said in a deep voice. Xiao Ming nodded. When he first arrived in Qingzhou, he was assassinated. The person who assassinated him was the fourth prince. How could he give Yandy to him with such a scorpion-hearted person? Snake is bitten by snake. Although the method of assassination is not bright, but those who walk at the peak of power are not blood-stained on their hands. Kindness is not in charge of soldiers, righteousness is not good, and I want to be an emperor to manage the great Yu kingdom in an orderly manner. Remember not to leave any traces. It's best to let the Yan family and the Ji family do it themselves, so as not to get more right and wrong. Xiao Ming reminded. Li San nodded. At this time, he was full of energy. For him, handling this matter perfectly was a reward for Xiao Ming. Of course, this matter was only the original intention of Xiao Ming to find him, not to exchange Liuli. Having said this, Xiao Ming asked Li San about Wei Di again, and only then did Li San go back. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.